Tonight, I do not want you to try to get anything. That may sound strange, especially if you came here with something very definite upon your heart. Perhaps there is a person you wish to know more deeply. Perhaps there is a sum of money that would give you room to breathe. Perhaps there is work you desire, a home you would love to enter, an opportunity you have imagined many times, a condition you wish to leave behind, or simply a kind of peace you have not felt for a very long while. Whatever it is, you do not have to reach for it tonight. You have reached enough. You have wondered enough. You have asked how long enough. You have perhaps imagined it, prayed about it, reasoned with yourself about it, and then looked again at the facts to see whether anything had moved. You may have carried the desire into the morning, through the afternoon, and back into bed at night, thinking that if you could only desire it correctly, believe strongly enough, or hold the right picture long enough, something would finally yield. But notice what happens whenever consciousness reaches. The hand reaches because it does not yet feel that the object belongs where the hand already is. The eye searches because it assumes what it seeks is somewhere beyond its present field. The traveler asks how far, because he believes himself to be here while the destination remains there. And so there is a subtle contradiction hidden inside much of what people call believing. They say, I believe it can be mine, while inwardly continuing to experience themselves as the one trying to make it theirs. They say, I believe I will receive, while continuing to live as the one who has not received. They say, I believe I am moving toward it, while every thought of movement quietly confirms distance. Tonight, I want you to become interested in that distance, not the physical distance, not the calendar, not what another person has or has not done, not what a statement of account presently shows, not what circumstance reports. I mean the inward distance created by the position from which you are looking. What if tonight were not about getting your desire, but about ending the identity that keeps calling it distant? Allow that question to remain unanswered for a moment. You do not have to understand it immediately. You need not sit upright and analyze it. You may let the words pass through you slowly as the body becomes less interested in the day. Before you drift any deeper, take one small outward action that reflects the inward decision you are making tonight. Subscribe to this channel, not as a bargain with life, and not because a button possesses any power over your future, but as a quiet marker that you are willing to return to these ideas and practice another relationship with your desire. Let that simple act mean, I am no longer devoted to chasing what I have chosen inwardly to make familiar. Each time you return, let it remind you not of something missing, but of the state you are learning to inhabit. Then leave that action behind. Do not carry it into the rest of the night. There is nothing more you need to do outwardly here. I want your attention now upon something far more intimate. Suppose I placed before you a beautiful object and told you that you must somehow make it yours by staring at it. You might look intently. You might concentrate until your eyes were tired. You might describe it. You might tell yourself that one day it would be yours. You might imagine how it would feel to touch it. Yet through all of this, one fact would remain unquestioned. You are here, and the object is there. The effort itself keeps the distance alive. Now suppose I tell you that the object has already been placed in your room, that it belongs there, and that there is no need to watch it. Your relationship changes. Perhaps you look at it once, then attention moves elsewhere. You no longer need to maintain possession by staring. What is yours naturally recedes into the background of consciousness. This is why true inner ownership may feel much quieter than longing. Longing is noisy because it continually announces the gap. Possession is quiet because it no longer has a gap to announce. The person who owns a familiar coat does not wake every morning thrilled that the coat still belongs to him. He puts it on. The person who lives in a familiar house does not spend every evening walking around the rooms repeating, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. He lives there. And perhaps the deepest misunderstanding about belief is the assumption that belief must always feel intense. It need not. What you deeply believe is often what you no longer think to question. You believe your own name without emotional effort. You believe the familiar room remains beyond the door even when the door is closed. You believe the floor will receive your next step You do not produce ecstasy first. Naturalness is enough. So tonight I am not asking you to convince yourself violently that your desire is already yours. Convincing implies an argument. Who are you arguing with? If one part of you says, it is mine, while another part shouts, no, it is not. Repetition can become a debate carried into sleep. I want something gentler. Do not force belief. Begin by reducing the distance, perhaps only 1 degree. Your desire does not need to feel completely yours tonight. Can it simply feel less foreign? That is a very different task. If you desire love, can love feel less like a country from which you have been permanently exiled? If you desire financial security, can support feel less like a privilege reserved for someone else? If you desire success, can capability feel less like a quality you must earn before you are allowed to begin? If you desire a home, can belonging feel slightly more available before the physical door is opened? If you desire peace, can peace be permitted for this breath even while some question remains unresolved? You see what I am doing. I am not dragging tomorrow into tonight. I am withdrawing tonight from the identity that says fulfillment has no place here. That is the beginning. You may have believed that the desire itself was the problem. It is not. Desire can be beautiful. Desire tells you something about a state consciousness wishes to experience, but desire becomes painful when it is married to the identity of permanent exclusion. I want love, but I am the one who is not loved. I want security, but I am the one whom life does not support. I want opportunity, but I am the one who is always overlooked. I want freedom, but I am the one who never escapes. I want peace, but I am the one whose life is always difficult. Do you notice the hidden marriage? The wish points one way, the identity points another. Then the mind tries to pull the wish toward an identity that continues refusing its meaning, and this creates effort. Perhaps you have called that effort manifestation. Perhaps you have called it persistence. Perhaps you have called it trying to believe. But tonight, let persistence mean something else. Let it mean that when you notice yourself returning to the identity of distance, you do not condemn yourself. You simply remember that another position exists. That is enough. A man may leave his home in the morning and return in the evening. He does not say, I failed to live at home because I spent the day elsewhere. Home remains his place of return. Let fulfillment become a place of return, not a state you must hold perfectly every second, not a mood that cannot be interrupted, not a picture that must remain before the mind all night. A place of return. You notice yourself saying, when will it happen? Return. You notice yourself thinking, perhaps this is never going to be mine. Return. You notice the old fear. Return. Not by replacing every thought with a louder thought, by remembering where you have chosen to live inwardly. Perhaps the new position says very little. Maybe it simply says, I do not need to call this impossible tonight. That is enough. Maybe I do not need to call myself excluded tonight. Enough. Maybe I do not need to solve the whole path tonight. Enough. Belief grows more naturally when you stop demanding a final verdict from yourself every 5 minutes. The mind is tired of being interrogated. Do I believe yet? Do I feel it yet? Is it mine yet? Did I imagine correctly? Did I doubt too much? Has anything moved? This is not rest. This is a courtroom. And many people take the courtroom into bed and wonder why they cannot feel fulfillment. They are asking the defendant to sleep while the trial continues. Tonight, adjourn the court. No verdict required. You do not need to establish beyond all doubt that the desire is yours. There is no judge here. There is no opposing counsel. There is only awareness becoming quiet enough to entertain another relation to the wish. Perhaps for years the desire has been placed before you like an object behind glass. You visit it inwardly. You admire it. You imagine what it might be like. Then you return to the old life and say, perhaps someday. Tonight, I want you to stop visiting, not stop desiring. Stop visiting the state as a tourist. Let it come nearer to identity. Suppose someone gave you a key to a room you had visited for years. At first you might still behave like a guest. You would be careful where you placed things. You might hesitate before opening a cupboard. You might still feel that someone else truly owns the space. The key is in your hand. yet the identity of guest remains. Then days pass. You begin leaving a book upon the table. A coat stays upon the chair. You know which board in the floor makes a sound. One evening you enter without looking around. You simply enter. At what exact moment did the room become home? Perhaps no dramatic moment existed. Familiarity accumulated. This is how I want belief to come. Not as an explosion, as residence, not as one grand emotional event, as the gradual disappearance of foreignness. Perhaps that word will serve you tonight. Foreignness. What you have wanted may feel foreign. Too beautiful for me, too secure for me, too loving for me, too prosperous for me, too peaceful for me, too easy for me. Notice the sentence hiding beneath all those ideas, that belongs to another kind of person. And if something belongs to another kind of person, then no amount of staring at it will create ownership until the person you call yourself changes. This does not mean becoming someone false. It means ceasing to describe yourself only through evidence of absence. Perhaps you have said, I have never had this before, therefore it is not like me. But everything familiar was once unfamiliar. Every city you know was once a place you had never seen. Every friend was once a stranger. Every skill you possess was once impossible to perform naturally. Every room you now cross without thought was once new. Familiarity is learned, so let fulfillment be learned. Tonight you are not demanding belief. You are allowing acquaintance. You are saying to the desired state, sit here for a while. I do not have to worship you from across the room. I do not have to beg you to remain. I do not have to know when every outer symbol will appear. I can simply become accustomed to your presence in imagination. And perhaps you are becoming sleepy already. Good. You do not need to hold on to this idea. If one sentence remains, let it be this. I do not have to get anything tonight. Feel what that removes. The shoulders do not have to pull the future toward you. The hands do not have to hold an unseen object. The forehead does not have to solve the road. The heart does not have to force certainty. I do not have to get anything tonight. The desire can remain, but the reaching can stop. This may sound like surrender, and it is, but not surrender of the wish. It is surrender of the identity that believes fulfillment must always remain at the end of a chase. There is a difference. You are not saying, I no longer care. You are saying, I no longer need to torment myself with distance in order to prove that I care. The more deeply something matters, the more tempting it is to watch it constantly. But watching is not possession. A man awaiting a ship stands at the harbor and scans the horizon. A man whose ship is safely anchored may leave the harbor and eat his supper. Which one thinks about the ship more? The one who does not yet know whether it is coming. Uncertainty creates attention. Ownership releases attention. So if you find yourself thinking about the desire constantly, do not assume that more thinking will necessarily create more belief. Sometimes belief grows when the thought is permitted to rest. The desire is not forgotten. It simply no longer requires surveillance. Before you drift any deeper, take one small outward action that reflects the inward decision you are making tonight. Subscribe to this channel, not as a bargain with life, and not because a button possesses any power over your future, but as a quiet marker that you are willing to return to these ideas and practice another relationship with your desire. Let that simple act mean, I am no longer devoted to chasing what I have chosen inwardly to make familiar. Each time you return, let it remind you not of something missing, but of the state you are learning to inhabit. And now leave it completely. Nothing else outward is asked of you. Return again to the quiet room within. There is a strange habit in human consciousness. The mind wants to obtain what the imagination has not yet accepted as natural. And so it says, give it to me first, and then I will believe it belongs to me. Give me the money, then I will feel supported. Give me the relationship, then I will feel chosen. Give me the position, then I will feel capable. Give me the house, then I will feel at home. Give me the answer, then I will rest. But if the state is always postponed until the evidence appears, the evidence becomes the master of identity. You stand before circumstances and say, tell me who I am. Tell me whether I may feel safe. Tell me whether I may belong. Tell me whether I may rest. Tell me whether I am worthy. Tell me whether I can stop waiting. And circumstance, being changeable, gives a different answer every day. A kind word lifts you, a silence lowers you, a gain gives confidence, an expense takes it, an open door makes you hopeful, a closed one names you a failure. What a difficult way to live. The mirror changes, and therefore the person before it changes expression continually, hoping to keep up. But suppose the cause is not the mirror. Suppose you begin with the expression, not by denying what appears, by choosing what the appearance is permitted to mean about you. This is where the night becomes useful. The day is full of evidence, letters, conversations, numbers, tasks, obligations, faces, movement. At night, much of it disappears from direct view. The room becomes quiet. The senses surrender some of their insistence. The visible world is still there, certainly, but you are no longer required to stare at it. And in this interval, you can ask a different question. Who am I when I am not consulting the evidence? That is a powerful question. When the account is not before your eyes, who are you? When the person is not in the room, who are you? When the office is closed and no one is judging your work, who are you? When the house you desire is nowhere in sight, who are you? When nothing is proving or disproving the wish, which identity remains? This is where your real habit becomes visible. Perhaps even in the absence of evidence, the mind recreates the evidence inwardly. You lie in bed and reopen the account in imagination. You recreate the conversation. You imagine the person's face. You hear the employer's answer. You carry the problem into the room even though the problem is not physically upon the bed. This demonstrates something extraordinary. You already know how to make an absent condition present. You do it through imagination. The question is whether the condition you make present is always the one you wish to continue inhabiting. Perhaps you repeatedly bring absence itself into the room. You imagine what you do not have. You imagine the delay. You imagine another disappointing morning. You imagine someone failing to respond. You imagine the expense. You imagine another door closing. And then you say, but I am only thinking about reality. No, the physical reality is not presently in the bed. You have brought a version of it into consciousness. And if you can bring one version, you can begin allowing another. Not fantasy for fantasy's sake. Another inner position. Perhaps the person does not need to appear in imagination at all. Perhaps love can. Perhaps the money need not appear. Support can. Perhaps the job need not appear. Capability can. Perhaps the house need not appear. Belonging can. Perhaps the problem need not vanish. Peace can still enter the room for 1 minute. This is how you stop giving the symbol total authority. You begin receiving the state before the symbol is asked to confirm it. Then the desire is no longer entirely outside you. Its deepest meaning has already been welcomed inwardly. And that is enough for tonight. Do not rush beyond this. I know the mind. The moment it learns a principle, it wants to know how quickly the principle will work. It says, very well, if I feel supported tonight, when will the outer support appear? There is the old question again. When? The mind has turned the new state into another technique for obtaining. Notice it with affection. It is accustomed to chasing. You need not scold it. Simply say, tonight is not about getting. Remember, tonight is not about getting. Tonight is about ending the identity that keeps calling fulfillment distant. That is all. The future does not have to report to you before morning. The unseen road does not need to reveal itself. Another person does not need to move while you sleep in order for this hour to have meaning. No event must be manufactured. Perhaps the greatest thing that happens tonight is so quiet no one else could see it. You stop standing inwardly with your hand extended. You bring the hand back. You let it rest. You say, I am willing to know the state before I know the route. That is enough. The route is not your concern in this moment. Consider how many times in life you have arrived somewhere without knowing every detail beforehand. You knew the destination. Then one thing led to another. A conversation, a decision, a delay, a change of plan, an unexpected meeting, a road you had not considered. If you had demanded complete knowledge before taking the first step, you might never have moved. Yet psychologically, you demand this of desire. Tell me everything. How will it happen? Who will do it? When? What must change first? What if this happens? What if that fails? The mind draws maps of countries it has never visited. Then it becomes frightened, because the map contains blank spaces. Let the blank spaces remain. A blank space is not evidence of impossibility. It is simply what you do not know from where you presently stand. And tonight, you are not required to know. There is profound rest in allowing an unanswered question to remain unanswered without converting it into danger. Perhaps you can practice that now. Think of your desire only briefly. Do not build a scene. Do not force emotion. Simply let the subject come near. Now notice the first question the old identity asks. When? How? What if? Will they? Can I? Am I? Do I deserve? Do not answer. Let the question float. You are not required to answer tonight. Notice what happens when a question is not fed. At first it may become louder. The mind repeats it. But how? You remain quiet. But when? Quiet. But what if nothing changes? Quiet. Not the silence of defeat. The silence of someone who no longer mistakes anxious questioning for productive action. A question can be present without becoming your master. Perhaps after a while it weakens. Another thought arrives. Then another. The body shifts. My voice continues. And for one small interval, the desire is present without the old interrogation. That interval matters. There is the wish. And there is no reaching. There is the desire. And there is no demand. There is the possibility of fulfillment. And consciousness is not measuring the distance. This is what I want you to taste tonight. Not complete conviction. Not emotional ecstasy. A moment in which distance is not being manufactured. You may be surprised how peaceful this feels, because much of what you called longing was not caused by the desire itself. It was caused by the repeated mental measurement between where you think you are and where you think fulfillment exists. You measured it in days, in money, in responses, in age, in past failures, in comparison with others, in how many attempts have already been made. You have been carrying a ruler. Tonight, put the ruler down. You do not need to measure what consciousness can begin to occupy without crossing physical distance. If you desire belonging, belonging has no miles. If you desire dignity, dignity has no timetable. If you desire inner security, there is no road that must first be completed before you may practice it. If you desire peace, this breath is close enough. The outer symbol may have distance, the state does not. That is why imagination is so intimate. It does not ask the body to travel first. You can be lying in this exact bed, in this exact room, with the same circumstances waiting beyond the night, and yet the psychological relation can begin to change now. This is not pretending that tomorrow has already happened. It is recognizing that tomorrow need not create the whole of who you are. You may let tomorrow contain events. You may keep being now. And because you can be now, you can choose what state is allowed to accompany being. Perhaps the old state says, I am waiting. Return to the naked fact. I am. Do not add anything for a moment. I am. Before waiting. Before wanting. Before the account. Before the relationship. Before the opportunity. Before the hoped-for answer. I am. The desire is something occurring within awareness. It is not the whole of awareness. You are larger than the wanting. This is important because a person may become so identified with wanting that they cannot imagine themselves without it. Who would I be if I stopped wanting this every hour? Would I lose the desire? Would I give up? Would life forget what I asked? No. You might simply rediscover yourself. You existed before this particular desire became urgent. You contain more than the interval between wanting and receiving. The desired state should enlarge life, not shrink consciousness until nothing else can be seen. So permit the wish to become quieter. You are not abandoning it. You are making room around it. Imagine holding a small bird in your hands. If you fear losing it, you may tighten your grip. But the tighter the grip, the less gentle the holding becomes. There is a way to hold without crushing. Desire can be held this way. Open enough to breathe. Open enough to rest. Open enough that you no longer think pressure proves sincerity. You can want deeply without hurting yourself with the wanting. You can prefer an outcome without declaring yourself incomplete until it arrives. You can imagine a beautiful future without making this present breath an enemy. These ideas belong together, and perhaps they are beginning to bring you towards sleep. If so, let them. You do not need to remain awake until I make another point. Nothing essential waits at the end of this section. You have already heard the central invitation. You are not trying to get anything tonight. Say it inwardly if you wish. I am not trying to get anything tonight. Notice that this does not say, I do not desire anything. You may desire. It says, tonight I stop turning desire into pursuit. I am not trying to get anything tonight. The mind may respond. Then what am I doing? Resting near another state, becoming acquainted with the meaning of fulfillment, allowing what once felt foreign to become less foreign. That is all. If you desire love, perhaps you are becoming acquainted with belonging. If money, with support. If work, with usefulness and capability. If a home, with rootedness. If freedom, with the absence of inward captivity. If peace, with the possibility that not every unresolved matter needs to enter the bed with you. Let the state come closer without requiring a picture. Perhaps you simply feel that the room has more space. Perhaps the breath moves lower. Perhaps nothing changes physically. Do not inspect. Inspection would turn the state into another object. Let whatever occurs be ordinary. The person who possesses does not continually check whether possession feels correct. They live. And tonight, living may mean sleeping. You can fall asleep without having settled every doubt. You can fall asleep without knowing whether you believe enough. You can fall asleep without seeing anything vivid. You can fall asleep while the desire remains physically unfulfilled. The body does not need to wait for the world before it may rest. Perhaps this itself is the first experience of having. The old self says, I will rest when the answer comes. The new state says, I am allowed to rest now. Not because the answer is physically in my hand, because rest is no longer held hostage by absence. That is a great movement, small outwardly, great inwardly. You withdraw one privilege from the desired object. You no longer allow it to decide whether you may sleep in peace tonight. Perhaps tomorrow you will take practical steps. Good. If a conversation is needed, have it. If work is needed, do it. If planning is needed, plan. If help is needed, seek it. Inner assumption does not make intelligence unnecessary. But tonight, there is no practical action in the dark that requires you to rehearse fear for hours. Tomorrow can receive your action. Tonight can receive your being. And when action comes tomorrow, perhaps it will come from a different place. Not the one saying, I must do this or I will never be complete. Perhaps from one saying, this seems like the next sensible movement. Can you feel the difference? One action pleads for identity. The other expresses identity. One says, let this make me worthy. The other says, I act because I already permit worth. One says, let this rescue me. The other says, let me meet this responsibly from support. One says, I must force the door. The other sees whether the door opens, whether another door exists, whether perhaps the path turns elsewhere. A fulfilled identity can still act strongly, but it does not need every action to manufacture the self. That is where freedom begins. You do not have to make yourself tonight. You already are. I am. Before the wish, I am. Before the evidence, I am. Before tomorrow. And perhaps from that simple awareness, you can allow the state you desire to sit beside you without begging it to prove itself. No drama. No urgency. No demand. Just familiarity beginning. Perhaps this is the first night it sits quietly in the room without being interrogated. Welcome it. Not with excitement, if excitement does not come. With room. You may remain here. Support may remain here. Love may remain here. Belonging may remain here. Peace may remain here. Possibility may remain here. I do not have to drive them away by saying, not yet, not yet, not yet. How many good states have you refused because the outer symbol was not yet present? You felt a moment of peace and immediately said, but the problem is still here. Peace left. You felt hope and said, but there is no evidence. Hope left. You felt worthy and remembered someone's rejection. Worthiness left. You felt possibility and consulted an old failure. possibility left. You kept demanding that every inner state obtain permission from outer history. Tonight, let one state remain without explaining itself to history. Perhaps only peace. The problem may exist. Peace can still sit in the room, perhaps only belonging. The relationship may not yet exist in the form you desire. Belonging can still sit in the room, perhaps only support. The financial facts may require change. Support can still become an inner orientation. These are not contradictions. The outer and inner are describing different levels of experience. One says what is presently visible. The other says who you choose to be in relation to what is visible. And the second changes what the first can mean to you. This is why the desire can become yours inwardly, before everything outside is settled. Its meaning becomes yours, its state becomes less foreign, its emotional atmosphere becomes a place you can visit without asking permission. Eventually, perhaps, not visit, live, but do not hurry there tonight. One step is enough, less foreign, that is all. Let your wish become 1 degree less foreign. Perhaps you cannot yet say, it is mine, and feel peace. No matter. Could you say, this kind of life is not forbidden to me? Maybe. Could you say, I do not know enough to call it impossible? Perhaps. Could you say, I can allow the idea to remain without arguing with it? Yes. Then begin there. Belief is not built by insulting where you currently stand. It is invited through tolerable steps toward naturalness. A thought accepted without resistance today may become familiar tomorrow. What is familiar may eventually feel obvious, and what feels obvious is no longer begged for inwardly. You simply live from it. This is where we are going, but not now. Now the night is deeper. The body may want fewer words, so let the central idea become simpler. You are not trying to get anything. You are releasing distance. You are not trying to force belief. You are permitting possibility. You are not trying to hold the future. You are allowing the present self to stop calling fulfillment foreign. No need to know how. No need to know when. No need to remain alert. Perhaps my voice can become like a lamp in another room. You know it is there. You do not need to look at it. The eyes may rest. The jaw may stop preparing words. The hands may forget the desire for a little while. That is all right. What is truly being made familiar does not disappear merely because you stop staring at it. The house remains when the lights are turned off. A familiar room does not vanish in darkness. You can cross it without seeing every object because you know where you are. Perhaps belief will eventually feel like that. Not bright, not dramatic, known. But tonight, you do not have to arrive at knowing. You are simply letting the room become familiar. And if sleep comes while you are still uncertain, let sleep take the uncertainty with it. Nothing has failed. You are not here to achieve certainty before unconsciousness. You are here to stop making disbelief your final identity. There is a difference. You may fall asleep somewhere between the old assumption and the new familiarity. That is enough. A bridge does not become useless because you have not crossed all of it in one step. You have begun moving, and perhaps the greatest movement tonight was not toward the desire at all. Perhaps it was away from the one who believed that reaching was the only way to relate to it. Let that old reaching self become tired. It has worked very hard. It has watched, calculated, compared, imagined, rehearsed, asked, checked, repeated. Perhaps it believed all this labor was love for the wish. Thank it. Then let it sleep. Nothing must be obtained before morning. Nothing must be forced before morning. Nothing must be proven before morning. You are not waiting for sleep to deliver a prize. You are allowing sleep to arrive after you have ceased reaching. And perhaps that is the first taste of what it means for something to feel already yours. Not that you shout ownership, not that you deny appearances, not that you pretend, only that the reaching hand finally rests. The eyes stop searching the horizon. The question loosens. The distance becomes less interesting. And in the quiet that remains, you discover that fulfillment may have been closer to the simple feeling of home than to the excitement of acquisition. You do not need to get anything tonight. You may simply rest near what you have chosen to stop calling foreign. And for now, that is enough. And now I want you to release one more responsibility. You do not have to believe me before you fall asleep. You do not have to remain awake until some final sentence persuades you. You do not have to reach a point in the night where suddenly everything becomes certain and all doubt disappears. You do not have to manufacture conviction. You do not have to produce a feeling strong enough to satisfy some invisible standard. If sleep comes while you are still uncertain, let sleep come. If my words become distant before you fully understand them, let them become distant. If you hear only fragments, that is enough. If you lose the thread entirely, that is enough. There is nothing at the end of this night that you must consciously collect before you are permitted to rest. Belief is not a prize hidden in the final sentence. And I do not want you lying there wondering whether you have believed correctly. That would only create another form of effort. Perhaps you have spent years thinking that belief must feel like absolute certainty. You imagine that a person who truly believes never questions, never trembles, never remembers the opposite, never feels discouraged. Then you look within and discover uncertainty. Immediately you conclude, I do not believe enough. And now you begin trying to make yourself believe. You repeat something more forcefully. You create another image. You search for another feeling. You attempt to drive doubt out of the room. But consider what happens when you try desperately to believe something. The very effort quietly says there is something in you that still requires convincing. You do not try to believe your own name. You do not spend the night persuading yourself that the bed is beneath you. You do not repeat 100 times that you know where you live. The things that feel natural do not demand such labor. So perhaps the road toward belief is not more force. Perhaps it is less resistance. You do not have to force belief tonight. You only have to stop forcing disbelief. Let those words settle slowly. You do not have to force belief tonight. You only have to stop forcing disbelief. There is a great difference. To force belief is to stand before a closed door and push against it with all your strength. To stop forcing disbelief is to discover that perhaps you are the one holding the door shut. You need not push harder. Release the handle. Perhaps the door moves on its own. Perhaps only an inch. That is enough. You have often strengthened disbelief without realizing it. Something good begins to feel possible, and immediately you search the past for reasons it cannot happen. You feel a moment of peace and quickly remind yourself of the problem. You imagine being loved and then summon every memory of rejection. You imagine being supported and immediately consult every number that has ever frightened you. You imagine success and then call before you all the occasions when you felt inadequate. Something within you opens the door a little, and habit rushes forward to close it again. Then you say, I cannot believe. But perhaps belief was trying to become possible. Perhaps disbelief was simply more practiced. There is no shame in that. A path traveled every day becomes easier to follow than one you have only just discovered. The feet move almost automatically toward the familiar path. You do not need to condemn the feet. You simply stop insisting that the old road is the only road. This is what I want from you tonight. Not certainty, permission. Permit the desired state to exist without immediately arguing against it. That may be enough for one night. Suppose you think of what you desire, and a quiet thought arises. Perhaps this could belong to my life. Notice how quickly another thought may answer. But it has not happened yet. You do not need to fight the second thought. Do not say, no, no, it is already mine, I must believe, I must believe. Simply recognize what happened. One thought opened possibility. Another attempted to restore the familiar conclusion. And you are the awareness observing both. Neither sentence must be crowned king because it appeared. Perhaps tonight you simply declined to finish the argument. Maybe, but what about the past? No answer. Perhaps. But how would it happen? No answer. It could be possible for me. But there is no evidence, no answer. You see, disbelief often survives by demanding a debate. It brings evidence. It calls witnesses. It opens old records. It insists that you defend hope before it will permit hope to remain. You do not have to enter the courtroom. A thought can make an accusation without receiving a trial. Let it speak and pass. You are tired. The court is closed tonight. No one needs to prove possibility. No one needs to prove impossibility. You may sleep before the verdict. This may sound almost too simple. The mind wants belief to be a great achievement, but many of the deepest changes begin when an old conclusion is no longer continuously defended. Imagine a man who has kept a lamp burning beside his door every night for years because he fears someone may come to harm him. Each evening he lights it. He checks the lock. He checks the window. He listens. Nothing happens. The next night he repeats the ritual because the ritual itself has become evidence that danger must exist. One evening, exhausted, he forgets to light the lamp. Morning comes. Nothing terrible occurred. The next night he remembers the lamp but leaves it unlit. For the first time, darkness does not mean danger. He has not forced himself to believe that the world is perfectly safe. He has simply stopped performing one act that kept danger psychologically present. This is how disbelief can weaken. Not through a magnificent opposite belief, through the ending of unnecessary reinforcement. What do you repeatedly do inwardly that keeps absence alive? Perhaps you revisit the same conversation every night. Perhaps you imagine the same rejection. Perhaps you count how long you have waited. Perhaps you compare your life with another. Perhaps you ask the same question even though no answer can be found at this hour. Perhaps you bring tomorrow into bed and interrogate it. These acts may feel like thought, but they are also rehearsals. They teach consciousness what to regard as natural. If every night you rehearse, it is not here, it is not here, it is not here, then absence becomes familiar. If every night you rehearse, something will go wrong, then danger becomes familiar. Belief often follows familiarity. So do not be surprised if the old state seems believable. You practiced it, not necessarily deliberately, but repeatedly. Now the task is not to reverse years of practice before dawn. That would be another impossible burden placed upon sleep. You are allowed to begin much more gently. Tonight, perhaps you do not rehearse the old conclusion for 5 minutes. That is enough. Perhaps you allow one unanswered question to remain unanswered. Enough. Perhaps you imagine one good possibility without immediately explaining why it cannot be. Enough. Perhaps you permit yourself to feel supported for the length of one breath without consulting the account. Enough. Perhaps you feel that love could belong to you without assigning a particular face to it. Enough. Perhaps you simply lie here and say, I do not know what is possible yet. That sentence may contain more freedom than 1,000 declarations you do not believe. I do not know what is possible yet. Can you feel the openness? The old state says, I know. It will fail. I know. They will leave. I know. Nothing changes. I know. There is no way. But do you truly know? Or have you repeated the conclusion until repetition became certainty? There are forms of disbelief that masquerade as intelligence because they speak with confidence. They say, I am only being realistic. Yet realism should describe what is known. Disbelief often predicts what is not known and calls the prediction fact. The account shows a number. That is known. There will never be enough, is prediction. Someone has not answered. That is known. They no longer care, is prediction. An opportunity did not work. That is known. Nothing will ever work for me, is prediction. You see how quickly the mind moves from observation into authorship. Then it forgets that it wrote the second sentence. It calls the whole paragraph reality. Tonight you may separate the two. This is what is presently known. And this is what fear added. You need not replace fear's addition with a glorious promise. Sometimes the most powerful answer is simply, I do not know that. They will reject me. I do not know that. This can never change. I do not know that. There is no way. I do not know that. I will always struggle. I do not know that. This is not weak. It is honest. And honesty can create room where forced belief cannot. The old certainty begins losing its throne. Not because you have installed another certainty immediately. Because you discovered the old one was not as solid as it pretended to be. This is why I say you do not have to force belief. You may simply stop forcing disbelief. Perhaps disbelief has been working overtime. It has had to explain every hopeful feeling away. It has had to reinterpret every moment of peace. It has had to collect the past and arrange it against the future. It has had to keep reminding you why you should not relax. It has had to turn every delay into a verdict. It has had to make every uncertainty dangerous. That is exhausting work. Let disbelief become tired tonight. Do not help it. If it wants to tell its old story, let the story begin. But you do not need to supply the next sentence. You have supplied enough sentences. Perhaps the story says, you know how this always goes. And instead of completing the familiar paragraph, you let silence follow. Silence. How strange that may feel. The old story expects cooperation. It knows its lines. It waits for you to say them. But you are sleepy. You forget the line. Let yourself forget. There is liberation in forgetting the old script. You do not need a new script immediately. For a moment there may simply be a blank page. Stay with the blank page. The mind may call blankness uncertainty. Yes, and uncertainty is not the enemy. Uncertainty means the future has not been completely written by what you currently know. That can be a doorway. If you do not know, then something different remains possible. You do not need to define exactly what. Possibility may sleep beside you without a name. Perhaps there is something you deeply wish to believe is already yours. The title "already yours" may make the mind immediately look outside. Is it mine? Where is it? If it were mine, why can I not see it? Notice how belief is being asked to prove itself through possession. Tonight, do not begin there. Begin with the meaning beneath the thing. If you want love, you do not have to force yourself to believe a specific person belongs to you. Let belonging become less foreign. If you want money, you need not force yourself to believe a sum is already physically in your hands. Let support become less foreign. If you want a position, you need not pretend the appointment has already occurred. Let capability and usefulness become less foreign. If you desire a home, do not force yourself to believe you possess a property you do not possess. Let the state of having a place in life become less foreign. Do you see the gentleness? We are not asking consciousness to deny its senses. We are asking consciousness to stop using the senses as evidence that the desired state itself is forbidden. That is very different. Perhaps you cannot believe yet that a particular outcome is certain. No matter. Can you stop believing that you are excluded from good outcomes? That is already movement. Perhaps you cannot believe tonight that everything will become easy. No matter. Can you stop insisting that everything must remain difficult? Movement. Perhaps you cannot believe you are completely fearless. No matter. Can you stop assuming fear must make every decision? Movement. Perhaps you cannot believe the wish is fully yours. Can you allow the idea that it is not foreign to your life? Movement. Belief may grow by degrees. Do not despise degrees. Dawn itself comes by degrees. At first the night looks unchanged. Then the blackness softens. A roof becomes visible. A tree separates from the sky. No trumpet announces the exact instant darkness became morning. Light simply becomes more present. Belief can be like that. One evening the idea feels impossible. Another evening merely unlikely. Later conceivable. Then possible. Then familiar. Then natural enough that you stop examining it. You may not notice the precise hour when the change occurred. That is perfectly well. Naturalness is not required to announce itself. In fact, when something becomes deeply natural, you often cease thinking about how natural it is. There is a stage in learning where effort disappears. A child learning letters must think carefully. Later the adult reads without consciously naming every letter. The process becomes background. Belief can become background. But you do not get there by shouting at yourself for still learning. You get there through repetition, without violence. Return, rest, return, rest. Perhaps that rhythm is enough. You touch the desired state, then you go about life. You notice the old state. You return. You do not demand perfection. You allow familiarity to accumulate. Tonight is one return. Nothing more. You may fall asleep halfway through it. That does not cancel the return. Suppose you enter a room and fall asleep in a chair before exploring every corner. You are still in the room. You did not fail to enter because consciousness rested. Likewise, if you touch one small sense of support and then sleep, the fact that you did not maintain it for 2 hours does not invalidate the moment. Perhaps you felt, for 3 breaths, that you did not have to solve everything. That is a state. Perhaps you imagined nothing. Perhaps you only stopped worrying for a short interval. Do not say, that cannot be enough. Enough for what? Enough to begin becoming familiar with another way of being. Yes, the mind loves grand measures. How long did I feel it? How vividly? How emotionally? How many repetitions? But natural belief does not wear a measuring instrument. Do you measure how strongly you believe in your own birthday? Do you assign a number to your certainty that a familiar friend is who you know them to be? Belief is not always quantifiable. It is often revealed by what you no longer need to ask. One day you may notice that a question disappeared. You no longer ask, can this belong to me? You may not even remember when you stopped asking. That is naturalization. Do not force the disappearance tonight. Just stop feeding the question every time it returns. Perhaps it asks, do you really believe? And you say, I do not need to answer you now. That is enough. Can you feel how restful that is? You are not required to certify your own consciousness before sleep. No certificate is needed. You do not need to pass a test of faith. You are permitted to be unfinished. Belief itself may be unfinished. You may sleep as someone in transition, between old certainty and new possibility, between familiar absence and unfamiliar possession, between reaching and resting. This interval is not failure, it is the bridge. The mind often becomes impatient with bridges. It wants to be at the other side immediately. But there are times when the bridge itself is the new experience. You are no longer standing where you began. You have not yet made the new state completely natural. You are moving. That is enough. And sometimes the wisest thing to do in the middle of a bridge is not to keep looking over the edge. Walk gently. Or tonight, sleep. Let sleep carry you across portions you do not need to inspect consciously. You may wake tomorrow and feel exactly as you felt today. Do not make that a verdict. A morning mood is not the judge of every inner movement. Perhaps you wake with doubt. Let doubt be present. You know now that a doubtful thought does not compel you to renew disbelief. That is different. You may feel doubt and not build a house for it. You may notice doubt and continue living. This distinction will save you from endlessly starting over. Many people imagine that one doubt destroys the whole state. Then doubt appears, as thoughts do, and immediately they say, I ruined it. Now they must rebuild everything. Another doubt appears. Again they restart. They spend their lives at the foundation because every cloud is treated as a storm that destroyed the house. Do not do this. A house can contain weather outside it. A state can contain passing thoughts without surrendering identity. You may be a loved person and experience insecurity. You may be capable and experience uncertainty. You may be financially responsible and experience concern. You may live from peace and still have a difficult hour. A state is larger than one emotion. You do not need to turn your humanity into evidence against yourself. This is why I am giving you permission to fall asleep before you believe me. Because perhaps the one who demands complete belief before sleep is another perfectionist disguised as a spiritual seeker. It says, you may rest when you have done the inner work correctly. No, rest is not a reward for perfect consciousness. Rest is part of the work of becoming natural. The tired mind is often more argumentative than the rested one. The exhausted body finds danger more easily. Perhaps the most faithful thing you can do tonight is stop trying to repair yourself. You are not a broken machine lying upon a workbench. You are consciousness learning another relation to its own assumptions. Let learning be gentle. Think of how you become familiar with a new song. The first time, you do not know where it is going. The melody turns unexpectedly. Later you recognize the next movement before it comes. Eventually the song seems obvious. You may hum it without effort. Belief can become like this. The desired state has a melody unfamiliar to you. At first, you do not know its next note. Support feels strange. Belonging feels strange. Rest feels strange. Receiving feels strange. Not checking feels strange. You may even feel safer in the old tension because you know its melody perfectly. Do not be discouraged. Listen again. Another night. Another return. Eventually the new notes stop surprising you. That is what repetition can do when repetition is not anxious. You are not chanting in order to force the world. You are listening until another inner music becomes familiar. Perhaps tonight all you hear is one note. I am allowed to rest. Let that be the note. Or, this may be possible for me. Or, I do not know that the old ending must repeat. Or, I can stop arguing for absence tonight. Simple. Belief need not begin with a proclamation. It may begin with a question mark placed after an old certainty. I will always struggle. Will I? I am never chosen. Is that truly the only possibility? Nothing changes. Nothing. Already the wall has a crack. Light does not need the whole wall removed to enter. One opening is enough. Do not then spend the night measuring the crack. Let light do what light does. You do not need to supervise. Perhaps you have believed that vigilance is faithfulness. You think if you stop paying attention, you lose the desired state. But constant attention may be another form of fear. You do not keep looking at a chair while sitting in it to make sure it remains beneath you. You put weight upon it. That is trust. So tonight, put a little weight upon possibility. Not all of yourself. You are not required to leap. Lean. Perhaps life can contain something better than the past suggests. Lean there. Perhaps you are more capable of receiving than you have assumed. Lean there. Perhaps you do not need to know the whole road. Lean there. Then stop thinking about leaning. Sleep. The chair does not need to be praised for supporting you. The state does not need to be praised for remaining available. You can let my words become indistinct now, if they wish. Perhaps you are already hearing only portions. Good. I do not want active effort from you. Let the voice come toward you. Do not reach toward it. You do not have to follow every sentence to its conclusion. If you lose one, let it go. Another will pass. Perhaps none of them matter individually now. The atmosphere matters more. No examination, no demand, no forced conviction. Only the gradual easing of the old resistance. You do not have to force belief tonight. You only have to stop forcing disbelief. And perhaps even that sentence becomes too much. Then shorten it. No need to force. That is enough. No need to force. The mind may still think. Let it. The body may still contain tension. Let it soften at its own pace. You may not feel deeply relaxed. That too is allowed. Do not turn relaxation into another test. Perhaps one part of the body remains tense all night. No matter. You are not trying to perform perfect sleep either. The night can contain restlessness. The state can contain imperfection. You are not here to produce a flawless experience. You are here to stop making flaws into conclusions. Perhaps you wake during the night. The old thought may be waiting. Let it wait. You do not need to climb into it immediately. Feel the bed. Notice the dark. Perhaps say, I do not need to decide anything now. Then allow consciousness to drift again. If the desire appears, let it appear. Do not grab it. If a scene comes, enjoy it lightly. If no scene comes, nothing is missing. If you feel nothing special, nothing is wrong. Feeling does not always announce itself dramatically. Sometimes the new state is simply the absence of the old labor. You are not arguing. That is a feeling. You are not checking. That is a state. You are not rehearsing tomorrow. That is an imaginal consequence. You are lying here without trying to solve the wish. That may be closer to believing than you realize. For the one who deeply believes possession is possible, does not need to spend every second manufacturing it. There is a rest that belongs to acceptance. Perhaps you taste only a little of it tonight. Enough. Tomorrow, perhaps another little taste. Belief is allowed to grow quietly. No announcement, no pressure, no command. Do not compare your inner experience with anyone else's. One person may see vivid images. Another may feel a physical release. Another may hear words inwardly. Another may experience nothing they can describe. No matter. The important movement may be so subtle that it escapes conscious measurement. Perhaps you simply stop using one old phrase. Perhaps never appears less often. Perhaps impossible loses some authority. Perhaps not for me becomes I do not know. These are changes, small doors. Let them remain small. A door does not need to be enormous to permit passage. You may pass through gently. And perhaps belief itself is not on the other side as a great emotional event. Perhaps on the other side is simply a room where the desired state does not feel absurd. You sit there. The room is unfamiliar. After a while it becomes less unfamiliar. Then one evening you realize you know where the chair is even in the dark. That is enough. You belong there a little more. This is what I want from repeated nights. Not dependence upon my voice. Familiarity with your own chosen state. Eventually my words should become unnecessary. A teacher points. The student learns where to look. Then the pointing hand may disappear. Your consciousness remains. Your imagination remains. Your ability to withdraw authority from old conclusions remains. No voice outside you must carry the state forever. Tonight the voice is only company while you become quiet. And if you fall asleep before I finish, perhaps that is the most natural sign that you no longer need to keep watch. The watcher is tired. Let him sleep. The skeptic may sleep. The seeker may sleep. The one trying to believe may sleep. The one trying to get it right may sleep. What remains does not need a title. You are here, breathing, being, and being does not require an argument. Perhaps your desire is still unresolved externally. Let it remain unresolved for the night. You do not have to resolve it inwardly through force. You can simply refuse to make unresolved mean impossible. That is enough. Unresolved is not impossible. Unseen is not forbidden. Delayed is not denied in identity. Unfamiliar is not unattainable. A question is not a verdict. A doubt is not a command. A feeling is not a prophecy. Let these distinctions loosen the old grip. You may have treated every doubtful feeling as evidence. Tonight it can simply be weather passing through consciousness. A cloud does not cancel the sky. Fear does not cancel possibility. An old thought does not cancel a new direction. You do not have to fight clouds. Let them move. Perhaps you cannot see the stars behind them tonight. The stars do not require your sight in order to remain where they are. Likewise, a chosen state can remain available even when you cannot feel it vividly. You can return when the cloud passes. No emergency, no restarting from nothing. Just return. This is how belief becomes durable. Not because doubt never appears, but because doubt ceases to become a throne. It can visit without governing. And this night does not need a ruler. Let everything become quieter. The desire, the doubt, the effort, even the hope. You do not need to hope intensely. Hope can rest too. Perhaps only openness remains. A simple openness that says, I do not know enough to close the door. Beautiful. Leave the door open and stop standing beside it. You need not watch who enters. You need not ask when. The open door does not require your eyes. Let the darkness remain on the other side. Let sleep remain on this side. Or perhaps there are no sides anymore. Only a room becoming quiet. You may fall asleep before you believe me. You may fall asleep before you believe yourself. You may fall asleep with one question unresolved. You may fall asleep with an old thought still somewhere in the mind. Nothing is spoiled. You are not required to cross the entire distance tonight. Perhaps you are discovering there was less distance than you thought. The old belief was familiar. The new state is becoming familiar. That is enough movement for one night. No final declaration is required. No dramatic feeling. No proof. No internal ceremony. Simply less resistance. Less argument. Less insistence that yesterday must become tomorrow. Less insistence that what is unseen cannot belong to you. Less insistence that belief must be perfect before it is useful. Let perfection leave first. Then perhaps disbelief can follow. Not chased, not expelled, just no longer fed. The fire dies when wood is no longer added. You do not need to fight the flame. Stop carrying wood. Perhaps the old story burns quietly for a while. Let it. You do not need to sit beside it all night. Turn away. Rest. Another part of consciousness is waiting to become familiar. Support, belonging, capability, peace, receiving. Whatever your desire means beneath its outer form. You do not have to seize it. Let it sit near you. No demand that it prove itself. No demand that you believe completely. Only companionship. You and the state in the same room. That is enough for familiarity to begin. And if sleep carries you away while the two of you sit there quietly, then let sleep carry you. You have done nothing wrong. Perhaps this is the first night in a long time when belief was not another task. Let that itself be the lesson. You do not have to force belief tonight. You only have to stop forcing disbelief. And now perhaps even that effort can end. No forcing at all. Only rest. I want you now to notice something very subtle about desire. Not desire itself, for there is nothing wrong with desire. I mean the position hidden inside the sentence, I want it. Say those words inwardly for a moment. I want it. Do not judge them. Simply listen to what they imply. There is an I here, and there is an it somewhere else. I am here. It is there. Between the two, the mind creates a distance. Sometimes that distance is measured in days, sometimes in money, sometimes in another person's decision, sometimes in circumstance, sometimes in confidence, sometimes in the number of things you believe must happen before you are allowed to feel what you want to feel. But beneath all those measures is the same silent arrangement. Here is me, there is what I want, and so wanting can become a form of psychological geography. You draw a map within yourself. You place a mark where you believe yourself to be, then another mark where fulfillment seems to exist. And every time you repeat, I want it, without changing the identity from which you say it, consciousness may trace the road between those 2 points once again. Not because the phrase is magical, not because wanting somehow offends life, but because repeated wanting can quietly teach you to experience yourself as someone who is always on the way, always approaching, always almost there, always becoming, always waiting for arrival. This is what I want you to understand tonight. You may desire something deeply and still refuse to make waiting your identity. The desire is not the difficulty. The identity of the waiter is. Imagine a man sitting alone at a long table. The room is quiet. Before him is an empty plate. Beside the plate lies a beautifully written invitation. He has read it many times. It says that he is invited to a great dinner. There will be warmth, conversation, food, music, people he loves, everything he has been longing to experience. And so he sits at the empty table, reading the invitation again. He reads the first line, then the second. He studies the handwriting. He wonders whether the invitation is genuine. He reads his own name upon it to make sure there has been no mistake. He imagines the food. He imagines the laughter. He imagines what it would feel like to finally be seated among the guests. Then he reads the invitation again. Hours pass. The strange thing is that the dinner has already begun. Not somewhere across the city. Not tomorrow. Not at the end of a long journey. It is taking place in the room next door. Through the wall he can hear faint conversation. A chair moves. Someone laughs. He catches the scent of bread. But because he has become so concerned with the invitation, he never rises from the empty table. The invitation, which was meant to lead him into the feast, becomes the object he worships instead. He keeps reading the promise of participation, while remaining in the identity of the one waiting to participate. This is what desire can become. The invitation is not the problem. The dinner is not the problem. The man's relationship to the invitation is the problem. He has mistaken being invited for being excluded until some future moment. He thinks, I am the one who wants to attend the dinner. And because the one who wants to attend has become familiar, he does not notice that the invitation itself assumes his belonging. I want you to take this metaphor gently. Your desire may be an invitation, not proof of exclusion, an invitation. But if you spend every day reading the desire as evidence that you are not yet admitted, then you remain at the empty table even while consciousness has shown you another room. Perhaps you have done this with love. You keep reading the invitation. I want love. I want to be chosen. I want to belong. I want someone to see me. I want closeness. Again and again. And because the wanting becomes continuous, the identity underneath may quietly become, I am the one outside love. Then every thought of love strangely reinforces exile. You think of the desired person, but from the position of the one who does not have them. You imagine companionship, but from the position of the lonely observer. You imagine being chosen, but from the position of someone waiting for another to decide their worth. The scene may be beautiful, but the observer is still seated at the empty table, or perhaps the subject is money. You think of financial freedom throughout the day. You imagine numbers. You imagine relief. You imagine what you would buy, or what obligation you would settle. But if the thought always begins from, I need money so that I can finally stop being the one who is unsafe, then the identity of unsafety remains central. The invitation says support. You keep reading it as evidence of lack. You say, I want security. But beneath the sentence, the mind may whisper, because I am not secure. I want abundance, because I am the one who has too little. I want freedom, because I am the one trapped here. Again, I am not asking you to lie about facts. If money is needed, money is needed. If practical action is required, take practical action. But notice what you turn the fact into inwardly. A temporary financial condition can become the name you give yourself. A current difficulty can become a whole identity. And once the identity is the one who is trying to get out, even improvement may be interpreted through escape. Every small gain is asked, will this finally save me? Every setback is asked, does this prove I am trapped forever? The desire remains before you, but you never leave the chair. You read the invitation. Again, again, again. Perhaps this is why thinking about what you want can become exhausting. It is not always the desire that tires you. It is the repeated measurement of distance. Every thought becomes a ruler. How far am I from it today? Has anything changed? Am I closer? Did that conversation mean something? Did that opportunity move me toward it? Did I imagine correctly? Did I feel enough? Did I lose the state? How long has it been? The mind becomes a surveyor. It goes out each morning and measures the gap. Then it returns at night with its report. Still not there. And you fall asleep as the one still not there. I want you to see how unnecessary this measurement can become. A guest who has been invited to dinner does not need to measure the distance between the invitation and his right to enter. The invitation already settles that part. He may still need to stand. He may still need to walk through the door. There may still be movement, but he does not need to manufacture belonging first. Belonging is implied. This is a useful way to understand desire. The wish does not necessarily tell you that you are excluded. It may reveal a state that consciousness is ready to know more intimately. The desire for love reveals that love has meaning to you. The desire for freedom reveals that freedom is imaginable to you. The desire for security reveals that support can be conceived. The desire for meaningful work reveals that usefulness and expression matter. These desires are not punishments. They are not taunts from life showing you what you cannot have. But when the mind says, I want, for so long that wanting becomes self-description, the invitation becomes a reminder of absence instead of a call to participation. There are people who have wanted one thing for so many years that they no longer know who they would be without the wanting. This is important. Suppose I ask them, who are you? They may tell me the story of what has not happened. I am the one waiting for marriage. I am the one trying to become successful. I am the one still looking for the right opportunity. I am the one trying to get out of debt. I am the one hoping my health improves. I am the one waiting for someone to return. The desire has become biography. The waiting has become personality. Then fulfillment can feel almost threatening, not consciously, but psychologically. Because if the waiting ends, a familiar occupation disappears. What do you do with all the attention that used to watch the door? Who are you if you no longer spend the morning wondering? Who are you if there is no longer a problem to discuss inwardly? Who are you if you do not have to rehearse the desired future every hour? Who are you if wanting it is no longer one of the central activities of your life? Perhaps this is why some people keep returning to the empty table even after they have glimpsed the open door. The chair is familiar. The invitation is familiar. The longing is familiar. There is a strange comfort even in familiar pain. It tells you what to do. Read the invitation. Hope. Doubt. Read it again. Imagine the meal. Check whether the door has opened wider. Wonder whether your name is truly written there. Repeat. A whole identity can form around this cycle. And so I am not asking you tonight to stop wanting by force. That would simply create another struggle. You cannot command longing to disappear, nor should you necessarily want to. Instead, become curious about what wanting has been doing to your sense of self. When you say, I want it, what follows? Does the body lean forward? Does the mind immediately produce a picture of distance? Does a quiet ache arise? Does the next thought become, but I do not have it? Does the desire bring possibility closer, or does it send your awareness back into absence? Simply notice. This is the beginning of freedom. You do not have to destroy the sentence. You begin hearing its hidden companion. I want love, and perhaps hidden beneath it is, because I do not belong. I want money, because I am unsafe. I want recognition, because I am unseen. I want success, because I am not enough yet. I want freedom, because I am trapped. The first sentence names the desire. The second often names the state. And the state, more than the object, is what I want you to become aware of. Because the same desire can arise from very different states. One person may desire marriage because love already feels natural and they wish to share life with another. Another may desire marriage because they believe another person must rescue them from unworthiness. Same outer desire, different inward position. One person may desire greater income because they enjoy expansion, usefulness, creation, and greater capacity. Another may desire the same sum because they believe money must finally permit them to breathe. Same number, different state. One person may desire recognition because they have something meaningful to contribute. Another may need recognition to settle an old argument with everyone who doubted them. Same applause, different listener. This is why obtaining the object alone may not end the wanting. The object cannot permanently cure an identity built around deficiency. If the lonely identity enters a relationship, it may begin wanting reassurance, then more reassurance, then certainty that reassurance will continue. If the insecure identity receives money, it may begin wanting more money to protect the first amount. If the unworthy identity receives success, it may want greater success to prove the first was not accidental. The form of desire changes. The state remains. The empty table receives new invitations. That is why I keep bringing you back to identity. Not because external desires are meaningless. They are meaningful. But I do not want you to ask an event to do work that belongs to consciousness. An event may change your circumstances. It cannot automatically change every conclusion you have practiced about yourself. You may have to let that change begin within. And tonight is suited to such a beginning, because nothing is being demanded of you. You are not standing before the world trying to perform a new identity. You are lying quietly, perhaps already half asleep. The room asks nothing. The darkness asks nothing. You can notice the old sentence without obeying it. I want it. Very well. And then, must you add, therefore I do not have the state it represents? No, that addition is optional. You can desire an outer form, while allowing its inward meaning to come close. Perhaps you desire a loving relationship. The relationship may not be present tonight, but must belonging therefore be forbidden tonight? No. Perhaps you desire a larger income. The amount may not be present. Must every sense of support be postponed? No. Perhaps you desire a particular opportunity. It has not yet appeared. Must you therefore call yourself someone for whom opportunity is unnatural? No. This is where distance begins to soften. You do not drag the object toward you. You stop pushing its meaning away. That is subtle, very subtle. And because it is subtle, it is perfectly suited for sleep. No dramatic emotion required. No inner shouting. No magnificent scene. Perhaps only this recognition. I have been using I want it to mean it belongs somewhere else. I do not have to do that. Let the realization sit quietly. The man at the empty table reads the invitation one final time. He sees his name. He notices something he somehow overlooked. The invitation does not say, wait here until you become worthy. It says, come. He sets the paper down. Now notice what happens. The invitation does not disappear. He does not deny that there was once distance between the table and the next room. He simply stops treating the paper as his final destination. He rises. Perhaps he feels uncertain. Perhaps he wonders whether he has misunderstood. Perhaps the old chair seems safer. But then someone laughs in the next room. He hears plates. He smells the meal. And slowly he walks toward the doorway. This movement is not the outer event of your wish coming true. Do not interpret the metaphor too literally. The movement is inward. It is the movement from I am the one wanting toward I am willing to become familiar with what the desire implies. One step. Perhaps love is not foreign. Another step. Perhaps support is not foreign. Another. Perhaps I can belong before being publicly chosen. Another. Perhaps I can feel capable before the appointment is made. Another. Perhaps peace is allowed before the problem is completely solved. You move toward the room without forcing yourself to believe that every outer fact has already changed. This is far more mature than pretending. The imagination is not used to deny the empty plate. It is used to stop calling yourself the person who must remain at the empty table forever. The table was a circumstance. The waiter became an identity. We are separating them. Perhaps your current circumstance says, not yet. Very well. Let the circumstance say, not yet. Why must you attach, and therefore I am the one who never receives? That is your addition. Perhaps another person has not responded. That is fact. Why must you add, therefore I am unwanted? Perhaps you do not yet have the work. Fact. Why add, therefore there is no place for me? Perhaps the number is smaller than you prefer. Fact. Why add, therefore I live in permanent danger? The suffering often increases in the second sentence. Facts can require action. Identity judgments create worlds around those facts, and the mind becomes so accustomed to the second sentence that it thinks the second sentence came from the world. It did not. You supplied it. This is good news, because what you supply can change, not all at once, not tonight through force, but sentence by sentence. You may allow a fact to stop speaking after it has reported what it actually knows. The letter has not arrived. Period. Not, the letter has not arrived, therefore it never will. The relationship ended. Period. Not, the relationship ended, therefore love always leaves me. The opportunity was given to another. Period. Not, therefore I am destined to be overlooked. The account is under pressure. Period. Not, therefore I am permanently unsupported. This practice alone can create enormous inward space. You stop turning present conditions into profits. A circumstance knows only itself. It does not know all of tomorrow. Yet you have often asked today's circumstance to testify about a future it has never seen. Then you call the testimony realistic. What if reality is less complete than the fearful story suggests? What if the invitation really does lead somewhere beyond the table? You do not need to know exactly how. Tonight is not about solving the root. It is about becoming aware that repeated wanting can keep you psychologically seated. Perhaps you can hear it in certain phrases. I just want this to happen. I want it so badly. I want it more than anything. Why do I want it so much? When will I finally have it? Each sentence may tighten the knot. Again, not magically, psychologically. Attention contracts around absence. The desired object becomes enormous. Everything else becomes background. You wake with it. You carry it through the day. You bring it to meals. You bring it into conversations. You bring it into sleep. Even joy is asked whether it helps the desire. Even peace is evaluated according to whether it will make it happen. You can no longer take a walk without turning the walk into a method. You cannot rest without wondering whether resting improves your state. You cannot enjoy a pleasant hour without asking whether this means the manifestation is near. The desire has become a monarch. Every activity must report to it. This is not possession. This is captivity. If something were truly integrated into your life, would it require every other part of life to orbit it? Probably not. A person with a secure home does not spend every hour thinking about having a home. A person with sufficient food does not spend every moment contemplating food. A person secure in friendship may go hours without wondering whether friendship exists. Possession gives attention back. Wanting consumes attention. This is another clue. Ask yourself, If this were deeply integrated, what would my attention become free to notice? Perhaps you would notice other people again. Perhaps you would become curious about work. Perhaps you would enjoy a book. Perhaps you would hear music without attaching it to the desire. Perhaps you would sleep. Think of that. Perhaps one of the most convincing consequences of already yours is that you can sleep without thinking about it. The waiting self fears this. It says, if I stop thinking about the wish, perhaps I will lose it. But do you lose what is yours every time you stop thinking about it? No. Your possessions do not vanish because attention moved elsewhere. Your name does not disappear while you sleep. Your friendships do not cease existing because you read a book. What belongs naturally to life can tolerate intervals of inattention. So can an inward state. This is why I am gradually teaching you to release the wish from constant inspection. Not because you should forget what you want, because I want you to stop confusing obsession with ownership. The man in the dining room does not keep the invitation pressed against his chest throughout the meal. At some point, the invitation has served its purpose. He is there. Perhaps tonight you are not yet fully seated at the table. No matter. But you can put the invitation down for a little while. You know what you desire. Life does not require you to repeat the desire every minute to remember it. Your deeper mind is not so forgetful. Perhaps tonight the greatest shift is simply that you stop restating the request. You have asked. You know. Now become interested in the state. What would belonging feel like if you did not need to use a person as proof? What would support feel like if you did not need to stare at a number for one moment? What would capability feel like if no one were evaluating you tonight? What would freedom feel like if you stopped speaking inwardly to the thing you wish to escape? These are quieter questions. They do not ask, how do I get it? They ask, what is the inner experience I have been postponing? Perhaps you have been postponing relief. You say, I will relax when the money comes. Perhaps you have been postponing dignity. I will believe in myself when I receive the position. Perhaps belonging. I will feel lovable when someone chooses me. Perhaps peace. I will stop rehearsing the conflict when they apologize. Then what have you really given the outer event? Not simply preference, authority. You have made it the gatekeeper of your inner state. No wonder wanting feels desperate. The object has been assigned too much responsibility. It must not only appear, it must rescue your identity. That is an impossible burden to place upon any object or person. Even if it comes, the identity may soon demand another rescue. Let us relieve the wish of that burden tonight. The relationship may be desired without being appointed the creator of your worth. The money may be desired without being appointed the creator of your ability to breathe. The work may be desired without becoming the creator of capability. The home may be desired without being the first place where you permit yourself to belong. The apology may be desired without becoming the only door through which freedom may enter. Now the desire becomes lighter. You can still prefer it. You can still imagine it. You can still move toward it intelligently. But you are no longer asking it to perform resurrection upon a self you keep declaring dead until it arrives. Perhaps that language is strong, but it captures the habit. You tell yourself, I will become alive when. I will become worthy when. I will become secure when. I will become someone when. Then you wonder why the desire carries such pressure. You have placed your existence at the end of it. Bring existence back. I am. Before the wish. I am. Before the answer. I am. Before the invitation is opened. I am. And because I am, I can choose how I relate to what I desire. This is what I would have you remember. You are not the wanting. Wanting is an experience occurring within you. You are not the waiting. Waiting is a state consciousness can occupy. You are not the distance. Distance is a relationship you have been repeatedly imagining. There is something prior to all three. I am. And from that simple awareness, you can allow another identity. Perhaps tonight only slightly. You do not need to replace I want it with a sentence you do not believe. You may simply soften it. I would love this. Feel the difference. Perhaps. This belongs among the possibilities of my life. Perhaps. I do not have to treat this as foreign. Perhaps. I can become familiar with the state it represents. These phrases do not demand that the senses lie. They change the posture. Longing becomes preference. Distance becomes possibility. The clenched hand opens, and something becomes very interesting. When you stop gripping desire, you may discover what you actually wanted beneath the gripping. Not the panic, not the proof, the state, the warmth, the rest, the belonging, the freedom, the expression, the ease. This is what the invitation was pointing toward all along. The paper was never the meal. The desire was never intended to become the room in which you spend the rest of your life. It points. Then you enter. Perhaps you have spent years perfecting the art of reading invitations. You know every teaching, every phrase, every method, every nuance of imagining. You can explain the principle beautifully. But are you still at the empty table? That is the only question that matters. Not how much you know about the feast. Where are you sitting inwardly? Do you still define yourself as the one who waits to be admitted? Then let tonight be simpler than another lesson. Stand up inwardly. You do not even need to picture yourself standing. Just stop renewing the identity of the waiter for a moment. If when arises, do not feed it. If how arises, let it go unanswered. If the old sentence, I want it so badly, appears, hear what it contains. Then perhaps allow another sentence. I know what I desire. I do not need to suffer the desire all night. That is enough. You know what you desire. You do not need to suffer it all night. Let those words slow down. You know. No need to repeat the request. No need to keep showing consciousness the empty plate. No need to keep reading the invitation. Perhaps the paper can be folded now, placed gently upon the table. The room next door is quiet from here. You do not need to hear everything. The door is somewhere nearby. No need to search for it. The metaphor can begin fading. You are not required to complete the story. Perhaps the man rises. Perhaps he does not. Perhaps he simply realizes he has been free to rise all along. That realization alone changes the room. Likewise, perhaps nothing visible changes tonight, but you discover that I want it does not have to be the chair in which you sleep. You can lie here as someone who desires without becoming desire, someone who prefers without pleading, someone who imagines without measuring, someone who can allow an inner state without asking the outer symbol to produce it first. This is enough. The mind may become softer now. Perhaps you have spent enough time examining the sentence. Let even I want it fade. No need to replace it. For a moment, what if there is simply no request? Not because the wish has vanished, because the request has been heard. There is a deep peace in no longer repeating a request that consciousness already knows. Imagine someone knocking on a door, once, then again, and again. A voice from within says, I heard you. But the person continues knocking because silence makes them nervous. At some point, the knocking is not communication, it is anxiety. What if your desire has been known within for a long time? What if you do not need to knock all night? Let the hand lower. Perhaps no immediate answer comes. Still, the hand may lower. There is dignity in that. You are not begging consciousness to acknowledge what consciousness itself contains. The wish arose within you. It is already known there. You may let it be known without shouting. This is another form of trust. Not trust that every preferred event must occur exactly as imagined. Trust that you do not need to mutilate the present moment with constant reaching. You can meet tomorrow when tomorrow comes. Tonight, nothing needs chasing. You may notice the body itself has been shaped by wanting. The forehead reaching toward an answer. The chest holding something. The stomach anticipating. The hands almost trying to grasp what is not physically here. Let the body hear that the request is over for tonight. No need to obtain. No need to repeat. No need to calculate. The wish is known. Perhaps that is all you need. The wish is known, and now you may rest. If a picture of the desire comes, let it come. But do not stare at it as one standing outside a shop window. Let the picture be near, familiar, or let it disappear. If it disappears, you have lost nothing. The state can remain when the object leaves attention. Perhaps tonight you do not imagine the person. You imagine no one, and yet you feel less exiled from love. Good. Perhaps you imagine no number. Yet you allow the body to breathe as though it need not solve every financial question before sleep. Good. Perhaps there is no image of a position, no office, no congratulation, but you stop telling yourself you are useless. Good. Perhaps freedom appears simply as the end of one argument. Good. This is how desire ceases to be an idol. Its meaning becomes distributed through life. You no longer wait for one dramatic moment to grant you everything. You begin receiving pieces of the state now, not pretending, receiving inward permission. And something beautiful happens when the state is no longer completely postponed. The desire may become less painful. The old self may worry. It says, if I do not ache for it, perhaps I do not care enough. Do not believe that. Pain is not proof of sincerity. You can love something without injuring yourself in its absence. You can prefer deeply without making desperation sacred. A person who is invited to dinner does not honor the host by starving at the empty table. He honors the invitation by entering. Likewise, you do not honor your desire by remaining loyal to lack. You honor what it reveals by becoming increasingly willing to know its state. And now, because this is for sleep, I do not want you to turn that into work. Do not ask, how do I enter perfectly? No. Perhaps the door is opening by itself as you stop leaning against it, less wanting, less measuring, less explanation. The desired state becomes closer simply because you are no longer insisting it belongs somewhere else. You may not feel anything dramatic. Good. The next room may be entered quietly. No trumpets, no announcement. Perhaps you only notice the empty chair no longer feels like your permanent place. That is enough. You can get up whenever you wish. Or tonight perhaps, you simply fall asleep knowing you are not the chair. You are not the waiting. You are not the empty plate. You are not the unread future. You are awareness. You are the one capable of changing rooms. The room of waiting is not the whole house. Remember that. The room of waiting is not the whole house. You may have lived there so long that you forgot there were other rooms, but the building is larger than the place where you have been sitting. There is belonging. There is support. There is dignity. There is peace. There is usefulness. There is possibility. There is rest. Do not rush through every room tonight. Perhaps enter only rest. That is enough. Let rest be the first room beyond wanting. Nothing to acquire there. No trophy. No proof. Just less reaching. What if rest itself teaches you something about possession? When you rest, you stop pursuing the bed. You do not lie down and continue trying to arrive at lying down. You are there. Perhaps fulfillment begins in the same grammatical shift. Not, I am trying to get there. Simply, for this breath, I am here. Here. No object required. No future. No argument. Here. And perhaps from here, desire can exist without becoming distance. You may want something and still be here. You may prefer tomorrow to change and still be here. You may act tomorrow and still be here tonight. The present does not need to become a waiting room merely because the future contains preference. That may be one of the greatest freedoms you can discover. The future can contain your wish. The present does not have to contain your exile. Let that sink in. The future may contain your wish. The present does not have to contain your exile. You can be physically before an event without being psychologically beneath it. You can be before an answer without being unworthy. Before a relationship without being unlovable. Before wealth without making scarcity your essence. Before success without making failure your name. Before freedom without allowing the old prison to occupy every thought. Time can place you before something. Identity does not have to make you less than it. This is how you begin loosening the strange power of I want. It returns to what it should be. A preference, a direction, an invitation, not a sentence of separation, not a declaration of deficiency. You desire. Very well. The desire is known. Now who are you? Not what do you want. Who are you while wanting no longer speaks? Let the question remain. You do not need to answer. Perhaps the answer is simply the person breathing here. Perhaps more peaceful than a moment ago. Perhaps equally uncertain. No matter. You are still here. The invitation may lie upon the table. You do not need to read it again. Your name has not disappeared from it because you closed your eyes. The dinner does not become less possible because you stopped studying the paper. Perhaps the greatest movement now is away from the invitation altogether. The paper fades, the table fades, the next room fades, even the desire may fade. No need to preserve the metaphor, only understand what it showed you. Wanting can point, but wanting is not where you are meant to live. Let it point and then grow quiet. The wish may remain without the ache. The preference may remain without the distance. The future may remain unknown without becoming threatening. And you may remain here, no longer reading absence as your identity. Perhaps sleep is very close now. If so, let the final distinction become simple enough to follow you. I want it is something you may say. It is not who you are. Wanting may visit. You do not have to build your bed inside it. Waiting may appear. You do not have to call it home. The invitation has been read. For tonight, that is enough. Fold it, place it down. No more checking your name. No more wondering whether you were truly invited. No more staring at the empty plate. The room can become dark. The table can disappear. You may hear nothing from the room beyond. No matter. You do not need proof before sleep. You only need to stop making the absence of proof into the identity of the one excluded. The wish is known. The desire may rest, and the one who has spent so long wanting may rest as well. Now I want you to become very clear about a distinction that can free you from a great deal of unnecessary strain. There is possession, and there is ownership as a state. They are related, but they are not the same thing. Possession belongs to the world of objects, circumstances, agreements, places, events, and visible facts. You possess the house when the house is actually yours. You possess the money when it is actually available to you. You hold the position when the position has actually been given. You are in the relationship when the relationship actually exists between two people. I would never ask you to confuse those things. If a house does not legally belong to you, I am not asking you to walk through another man's door and declare that imagination has given you his property. If money is not presently available, I am not asking you to spend what you do not have. If you have not been appointed to a position, I am not asking you to tell others that you hold it. If another person has not chosen a relationship with you, I am not asking you to deny their freedom and pretend that an agreement exists which does not. That is not imagination. That is confusion. What I am asking you to discover is something subtler. The physical thing may not yet be in your possession, while the state represented by that thing can begin becoming inwardly yours. You may not possess the house, yet you can stop living psychologically as though you have no place in life. You may not have the position, yet you can stop calling yourself incapable. You may not presently be in the relationship, yet you can cease treating yourself as a person permanently excluded from love. You may not yet have the financial condition you prefer, yet you can begin withdrawing your identity from panic, humiliation, and the conviction that support belongs only to others. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. Listen carefully to that distinction. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. This is where inner ownership begins, not with pretending that your hands physically contain what they do not contain, with refusing to postpone the entire meaning of your desire until those hands close around the symbol. You see, every desired object carries meaning. You do not desire walls merely because walls are attractive. You desire what the walls mean to you. Perhaps privacy, perhaps permanence, perhaps a room in which you do not feel temporary, perhaps a place where your nervous system no longer expects to be uprooted, perhaps the quiet dignity of saying, "This is where I live." The house is physical. Home is also psychological. One may come before the other. This is important. A person can possess a house and still feel homeless within. They can walk through beautiful rooms and remain inwardly prepared to lose everything. They can own the key and still live like a guest. They can sleep beneath their own roof while consciousness continues saying, "None of this is secure. Nothing stays. I must always prepare to be displaced." The property has changed. The state has not. Then possession has arrived without ownership in consciousness, and the opposite can also begin. A person may not yet possess the desired house, but something in them has stopped wandering inwardly. They begin making decisions as one who has a place in life. They stop calling themselves temporary, in essence. They no longer treat stability as a language spoken only by other people. They allow rootedness to become conceivable. They care for the room they presently occupy. They stop telling themselves that beauty must wait until the final address. They begin inhabiting their own life before inhabiting the desired building. The property has not yet changed, but the meaning is no longer foreign. That is inner ownership. It is not a substitute for the physical thing. It is the state from which the physical thing would no longer be asked to create an entire person. This distinction will save you from placing impossible demands upon your desires. For often you do not merely ask a thing to appear. You ask it to tell you who you are. You ask the relationship to say, now you are lovable. You ask the money to say, now you may feel safe. You ask the appointment to say, now you are capable. You ask the applause to say, now you have value. You ask the house to say, now you belong. You ask the apology to say, now you are free. What a burden to place upon an event. It must not only occur, it must create your identity from nothing. And because you have given it such authority, its absence becomes unbearable. If the relationship is not here, perhaps I am not lovable. If the money is not here, perhaps I am not supported. If the opportunity has not appeared, perhaps I am not capable. If the home is not mine, perhaps I have no place. If no one has recognized me, perhaps I have nothing worth recognizing. Then circumstance becomes a priest granting and withdrawing permission to be. Today it blesses you. Tomorrow it condemns you. One word from another person raises you. Another word lowers you. One favorable number says you are secure. Another says you are in danger. One open door says life wants you. One closed door says it does not. You live like a leaf moved by every wind. And then you wonder why desire feels desperate. It feels desperate because you have given the desired symbol authority over your very being. Tonight I would have you take some of that authority back. Not all the practical importance. The authority over identity. A financial fact may require your attention. Let it receive attention. It does not require your identity. A relationship may end. That may hurt deeply. Let grief be grief. It does not have to become a decree that love itself has rejected you. An opportunity may pass. You may be disappointed. That disappointment need not become the name incapable. A home may be delayed. The delay does not have to mean that you are metaphysically without a place in life. There is enormous dignity in separating circumstance from identity. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you less enslaved. Suppose you desire a position that would allow you to use your abilities fully. Perhaps you have been telling yourself, once I have that position, then I will feel capable. But think carefully. Would the position manufacture capability? Would a piece of paper enter your mind and install intelligence? Would an employer's approval suddenly create every skill you have cultivated? Would the title put experience into your past retroactively? No. The appointment may confirm something. It may give your ability a wider field of expression. It may provide income, responsibility, influence, experience. These are real consequences. But capability itself cannot be entirely created by the appointment. Much of what the position would recognize must already be present in some form. Then why wait for the position before permitting yourself to relate to your own ability differently? You may say, but I still have things to learn. Of course, a capable person learns. Capability does not mean omniscience. You may need experience, then gain experience. You may need instruction, seek instruction. You may make mistakes, correct them. But none of these require the identity. I am fundamentally incapable until someone appoints me. See how different this is from pretending. Pretending says, I already hold the position. Inner ownership says, the dignity, usefulness, seriousness, and capability implied by that position do not have to remain foreign until the title arrives. That is sane, that is practical, and it is powerful psychologically because you begin acting from a different center. You prepare because you respect your ability. You apply because you expect that your contribution can belong somewhere. You learn because growth seems natural, not because you are desperately trying to earn permission to exist. The outer actions may look similar. The person performing them is different. One studies with the inner sentence, perhaps if I become perfect, someone will finally decide I have value. Another studies because value wishes to become more skillful. One approaches an opportunity begging it to create identity. Another brings identity into the opportunity. Can you feel the difference? It is subtle, but enormous. Now suppose the desire concerns love. This is an area where people often confuse possession and inner ownership more dangerously than anywhere else. Another person is not an object to possess. Love includes mutuality, choice, freedom, recognition, consent. You cannot honestly say another human being belongs to you merely because you desire them, but you can become inwardly familiar with being someone for whom love, reciprocity, tenderness, respect, and belonging are natural experiences. That is your domain. Perhaps you have lived as though love is always happening somewhere else. You see others being chosen. You hear of companionship. You imagine intimacy. And every image of love has been interpreted as evidence of your exile from it. Then you meet someone you desire, and suddenly all your need to escape that exile is placed upon them. Now every pause becomes enormous. Every word is studied. Every silence is translated. Every movement feels like a verdict. You are not merely relating to a person. You are asking them to decide whether you belong in the kingdom of love itself. No individual should be given that office. They are human. They have preferences, histories, moods, freedom. They may love you. They may not. They may stay. They may leave. They may be compatible. They may not be. But none of these possibilities need decide whether belonging itself is foreign to your identity. Imagine what changes when you withdraw that impossible burden from another person. You can actually see them more clearly. You can notice whether affection is mutual rather than trying to manufacture it. You can speak honestly because every sentence no longer risks annihilating your sense of worth. You can set boundaries because losing one relationship no longer means losing the right to love. You can receive affection without treating every pleasant gesture as water given to a dying man. You can enjoy instead of inspect. This is inner ownership of the state, not ownership of a person. You become familiar with love as something you are capable of giving, receiving, recognizing, and belonging within. Then relationship, when it comes in a healthy and mutual form, does not arrive to rescue an exile. It meets someone who already knows the language of home. And this is far more beautiful. Perhaps you are listening tonight with one particular person in mind. You need not fight the thought. Let them come to mind. But for one moment remove their face. What remains beneath the desire? Perhaps you want to feel chosen, perhaps wanted, perhaps seen, perhaps safe enough to be vulnerable, perhaps held, perhaps understood, perhaps accompanied. Let those meanings exist independently for a moment. Can chosen become less foreign without requiring this person to act tonight? Can belonging become less foreign? Can tenderness become imaginable? Can you stop calling yourself the one nobody truly sees? These are inward movements available to you without violating anyone else's freedom. And perhaps the paradox is that when you no longer ask one person to create the whole universe of love for you, you become more capable of genuine relationship. Need becomes less tyrannical. Perception becomes clearer. Love becomes less like rescue and more like meeting. Now consider money. How much symbolic weight have you placed upon money? Perhaps far more than purchasing power. Money may mean safety, status, freedom, choice, dignity, relief, ability to help others, permission to rest, escape from old humiliation. Maybe you do not only want money. You want the inner exhale you imagine would come with it. You want to stop calculating danger. You want to stop feeling inferior. You want to stop asking whether there will be enough. You want the body to stop bracing. And because all these meanings are attached to money, the number itself begins to feel sacred. You think, when the number changes, then I will change. But look around the world and you will discover people with money who are still afraid of money. Possession does not guarantee psychological ownership of sufficiency. A man may have more than he once dreamed and still spend his nights preparing for loss. The number expanded, scarcity expanded with it. The old state simply found larger numbers to fear. This teaches you something. The state you want cannot be outsourced completely to the symbol. Again, I am not saying money is irrelevant. If an obligation must be paid, a feeling alone does not pay it. If you require income, practical action matters. I am saying something much more precise. The absence of the desired amount does not require you to rehearse humiliation, permanent insufficiency, or catastrophe as identity. You can become financially intelligent without becoming psychologically impoverished. You can look directly at a difficulty without saying, "This difficulty is what I am." You can reduce expenses from wisdom rather than shame. You can seek new work from capability rather than panic. You can ask for assistance without translating assistance into failure. You can plan because you respect your future instead of planning because you believe disaster owns it. Support can begin as an inward relationship before every external source of support becomes visible. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. Perhaps tonight, money itself does not need to be imagined. Imagine instead the absence of humiliation. Imagine opening an ordinary letter and reading it as information rather than judgment. Imagine paying attention to a practical matter without the body announcing catastrophe. Imagine yourself thinking, "I can deal with what is before me." That sentence may carry more genuine ownership of support than an extravagant fantasy, which leaves you feeling poorer when it ends. I can deal with what is before me. Feel how quiet that is. No throne, no treasure, no dramatic victory, capability, support, room to breathe. The meaning begins arriving before the symbol, and perhaps when the symbol arrives, it finds a person better able to hold it. This is an important idea. You have been so concerned with receiving that perhaps you have not asked who receives. If the thing entered your life tomorrow, what state would receive it? Would love enter and meet someone expecting abandonment? Would money enter and meet someone convinced it must vanish? Would success enter and meet someone certain they are a fraud? Would freedom enter and meet someone who still spends every day arguing with the prison? Would recognition enter and meet someone who requires another round of applause 5 minutes later? Then the desire may physically arrive and yet fail to deliver the psychological salvation you assign to it. This is why I would have you prepare the inner receiver, not by becoming perfect, by becoming familiar with the meaning. A cup does not need to become the water, it only needs to be able to receive it. Let consciousness become receptive. Belonging belongs here. Support belongs here. Dignity belongs here. Opportunity belongs here. Love belongs here. Peace belongs here. Not as guaranteed outer events in precisely the forms you dictate, as states you no longer exile from your own identity. This is a very different use of the word mine. You say, "Peace is mine to know." Not because no conflict can occur, because I refuse to make conflict the only state available to me. Dignity is mine to know, not because everyone must praise me, because another person's opinion does not create or erase my right to meet life without self-contempt. Belonging is mine to know, not because everyone must choose me, because one rejection cannot exile my entire being. Capability is mine to know, not because I will never fail, because failure can become information instead of identity. Support is mine to know, not because every financial problem vanishes instantly, because I can stop worshipping panic as realism. This is ownership at the level of state, and notice how little pretending is required. None. You are not saying something happened when it did not. You are choosing what the unhappened event is allowed to mean about you. That is different. Suppose you are awaiting an important letter. There are two levels. Level 1 is simple. The letter has not arrived. That is fact. Level 2 is interpretation. The letter has not arrived, therefore I have been forgotten. The letter has not arrived, therefore the answer must be no. The letter has not arrived, therefore good things do not happen for me. The letter has not arrived, therefore my future is closing. The first sentence came from circumstance. The rest came from a state. You may leave the first sentence untouched and change the rest. The letter has not arrived. Very well. I remain capable. The letter has not arrived. I remain open to possibility. The letter has not arrived. Nothing about my worth has been communicated by an empty mailbox. Can you see the freedom? You do not manipulate the letter. You stop allowing its absence to manipulate identity. This is ownership before possession. You own your relation to meaning before you own the outer confirmation. A great deal of suffering arises because people believe they have only two choices: either admit the present circumstance and feel defeated, or deny the circumstance and pretend. There is a third way. See the circumstance accurately. Refuse to make it absolute. This is maturity in imagination. You can say, this is what appears today, and this is not the only identity available to me today. Both can be true. I do not presently possess the house, and I can stop calling myself fundamentally without a place. I do not presently have the title, and capability does not therefore belong to someone else. I am not presently in the relationship I desire, and love itself does not therefore exclude me. I do not presently have the financial condition I prefer, and I am more than a frightened interpretation of a number. This form of imagination does not weaken your grip upon reality. It frees reality from exaggeration. You stop turning one fact into the whole universe. You stop allowing one room to claim it is the entire house. Remember what I told you before. A state is a room. You can occupy the room of waiting, the room of rejection, the room of insufficiency. But the building is larger. The fact that you have slept in one room for years does not make every other room imaginary. Perhaps tonight you begin walking through the building, not physically, in identity. You discover a room called sufficient for this moment, a room called worthy without applause, a room called capable while learning, a room called lovable without possession of another person, a room called at home in myself before the final address. These rooms do not deny the world. They change where you meet the world from. Suppose tomorrow brings an unpleasant fact. If you live in the old room, the fact enters and immediately seems to belong there. Of course, another problem. This always happens to me. Nothing changes. I knew it. The circumstance matches the furniture. But if consciousness has begun occupying another room, the same fact may receive another interpretation. This is difficult. What is the next intelligent response? Same fact, different state. The old state turns difficulty into identity. The new state turns difficulty into something to be met. This is why inner ownership matters even before outer possession, because there is always an interval between desire and many of the forms through which life unfolds. What will you be in the interval? That is the question. Will the interval become a prison called not yet? Or can the interval become life? Think of how many months and years human beings sacrifice to intervals. They say, I will begin living after the marriage, after the money, after the move, after the promotion, after the healing, after someone apologizes, after the burden is gone, after I know what happens. Then the desired event becomes a gate before life. And because life is only ever experienced now, they spend years postponing the very states they hope the future will eventually grant. Do not make an enemy of the interval. The interval is where you are alive. If the outer thing requires time, let time do what time does. You need not fill every day of that time with psychological homelessness. This is what I mean when I tell you the meaning can enter identity before the symbol enters your hands. Perhaps the house requires months. Belong tonight. Perhaps the work requires preparation. Respect your capability tonight. Perhaps financial improvement unfolds through choices, opportunities, effort, and circumstances not yet visible. Do not make tonight an altar to catastrophe. Perhaps love has not appeared in the form you desire. Do not spend the interval practicing rejection. You are training consciousness every day. The question is what feels normal by the time the desired event appears. Suppose a person waits 10 years to become prosperous while practicing fear every day of those 10 years. When prosperity arrives, which state has had more practice? Prosperity for one day, fear for 10 years. Which feels natural? Then the outer condition may improve, while the mind remains loyal to the old rehearsal. This is why the interval matters, not because you must be perfect during it, because you can use it to stop deepening the state you hope the future will rescue you from. That is all. Perhaps you cannot feel abundant. Do not practice doom. Perhaps you cannot feel completely loved. Do not rehearse permanent rejection. Perhaps you cannot feel fully confident. Do not turn every uncertainty into self-contempt. Perhaps you cannot yet feel at home. Do not tell yourself you belong nowhere. There is always a gentler step, and gentleness is important at night. I do not want you to lie here performing spiritual acrobatics. You are preparing to sleep. The mind can become quieter. The body can become less responsible. The desire itself may grow indistinct. Perhaps tonight you practice ownership in the smallest way imaginable. You stop making the pillow beneath your head into a waiting room. For these minutes, you are here, not on the way, here. And what meaning would fulfillment allow you to experience here? Maybe relief. Then let one breath belong to relief. Maybe safety. Not perfect safety in every possible future. Safety enough for this breath. Maybe belonging. Not belonging to a particular person. Belonging to your own life. Maybe dignity. Then stop criticizing yourself for 1 minute. Maybe support. Let the bed support the body. Feel how simple that is. You may begin with what is physically undeniable. The bed supports you now. You do not have to imagine that. Let the body receive the lesson. Something can support me without my forcing it. The mattress does not need persuasion. Gravity does not require your concentration. The body becomes heavier because it is no longer holding itself completely upright. Support is happening. Perhaps financial support is another subject entirely. Yes. But the state of receiving support is not completely foreign. You are experiencing a form of it now. The air enters, the bed holds, the room shelters. Perhaps a blanket warms you. Life contains forms of support you stopped noticing because your mind was focused upon the form still missing. This is not an invitation to settle for less. It is an invitation to stop training consciousness to see only absence. If one form is missing, the state may still be introduced through another doorway. And once the state becomes less foreign, you no longer worship the desired symbol as its sole creator. Imagine someone standing in sunlight, demanding one particular lamp before they will admit light exists. They say, "I want that lamp." Very well. Desire the lamp. But do not stand in the sun declaring yourself abandoned by light until the lamp arrives. Let sunlight teach you light. Then when the lamp is yours, you enjoy it without making it the source of the sun. This is how I would have you approach your desire. Love may come through a relationship, but love is larger than one person. Support may be expressed through money, but support is larger than one number. Dignity may be reflected by recognition, but dignity is larger than applause. Home may be embodied in a house, but the ability to belong is larger than an address. Freedom may be expressed by changed circumstances, but freedom is larger than hatred of what confined you. When you discover the state beneath the symbol, you begin receiving before possession. Again, do not turn this into a trick for obtaining the symbol faster. The old mind will try. It says, "Very well. If I feel at home now, will the house come sooner? If I feel loved, will the person appear? If I feel supported, how quickly will the money arrive?" Notice what happened. You took the state inwardly for 3 seconds and immediately sold it back to the future in exchange for evidence. Do not do that tonight. Let the state have value in itself. Peace is valuable before it produces anything. Dignity is valuable before it changes anyone's opinion. Belonging is valuable before a relationship confirms it. Capability is valuable before an appointment recognizes it. Support is valuable before every circumstance becomes easy. This is genuine ownership. You are no longer using the state merely as currency to buy the event. You live it because it is the quality you chose. This is a much deeper form of faith. Faith is not a bargain. I will feel this if life gives me that. No. Faith says I can inhabit a state before I know the entire arrangement of circumstances through which life will answer. It is an inward allegiance, not to an object, to being. Perhaps you have been trying to believe it is already mine, and the phrase has felt false because your eyes can see that the object is not physically yours. Then stop forcing the phrase to mean physical possession. Let it mean something truthful and profound. The state implied by my desire is no longer forbidden to me. That is already mine to practice. The capacity to belong is mine. The capacity to feel dignity is mine. The capacity to imagine support is mine. The capacity to relate to myself as capable is mine. The capacity to stop rehearsing rejection is mine. The capacity to rest before every answer arrives is mine. You see? Now mine is no longer a lie told to the senses. It is a statement about where you place identity. And from there, perhaps later, the words "it is mine" can become more natural. Not because you hypnotized yourself into confusion, because you discovered the deeper thing you were claiming all along. Perhaps this is why the outer symbol can become so emotionally charged. You have compressed an entire state into it. The house carries all belonging. The money carries all security. The person carries all love. The job carries all capability. The future carries all peace. Too much has been packed into one container. Unpack it. Take belonging out of the house. Let some belonging live here. Take security out of the number. Let some steadiness live in this breath. Take worth out of the other person's hands. Let worth return to being. Take capability out of the title. Let it return to the one who can learn. Take freedom out of tomorrow. Let one old conversation end tonight. Then the symbols become lighter. You may still desire them, but you do not kneel before them. They no longer hold all the keys to your inner life. This is psychological wealth, to have more than one doorway into a state. Perhaps tonight you cannot find relief through thinking about money. Find relief through the fact that nothing must be solved in the next 60 seconds. Perhaps love feels difficult. Place a hand comfortably upon the blanket and let the simple sensation of warmth remind the body that tenderness exists. Perhaps belonging feels distant. Listen to my voice, speaking directly to the awareness that hears it. For this moment, you are not outside the experience. You are in it. Perhaps capability feels difficult. Notice that you have survived uncertainties before. You can meet one more morning without knowing the whole future tonight. These are modest movements. I prefer modest truth to magnificent falsehood. A believable step into the state is more valuable than an enormous declaration that leaves you internally arguing. Do not try to leap 10 miles if one honest step changes your position. Tonight, ownership may sound like this. I can stop calling myself excluded. That is enough. I can stop calling myself permanently unsupported. Enough. I can allow dignity before recognition. Enough. I can allow the possibility that home belongs in my life. Enough. I can let one desired meaning become less foreign. Enough. Do you notice how the body responds when the demand is reduced? It no longer has to perform certainty. Perhaps the chest loosens slightly. Perhaps not. No matter. We are not checking. This section is not another test. You are simply listening while the distinction settles. Possession is one thing. Inner ownership is another. The first may depend upon events, agreements, timing, action, other people, circumstances. The second begins where meaning meets identity. And because it begins there, something is always available now. Not everything, something. You may not control the event. You can question the identity you have attached to its absence. You may not control another person's choice. You can stop making their choice the author of your lovability. You may not control when opportunity appears. You can stop making delay proof of incapability. You may not control every financial condition tonight. You can stop giving a number the right to speak about the whole future. This is where power becomes sane, not omnipotence over every event. Authority over what you consent to call yourself. That is enough power to change a life. For identity shapes attention. Attention shapes interpretation. Interpretation shapes action. Action shapes relationships with circumstances. And the person who no longer calls themselves permanently excluded will notice possibilities the exile might have ignored. The person who no longer calls themselves incapable may attempt what the old identity dismissed. The person who is not begging for love may discern love more clearly. The person not hypnotized by panic may make a financial decision with more intelligence. You do not need a mystical explanation for every consequence. State matters because it changes the one who meets life. And tonight, you can begin changing the meeting place. No outward performance required. Tomorrow, if the facts require action, act. Tonight, let identity rest somewhere different. Perhaps there is a beautiful simplicity in this. The thing can remain outside the room. Its meaning does not have to remain outside you. The house may be elsewhere. Belonging can sleep here. The appointment may be unsigned. Capability can sleep here. The desired relationship may not exist. Lovability need not sleep outside. The money may not yet be present. Your dignity does not need to wait at the bank. The answer may not have come. Peace can lie down before it. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. Let me say it again slowly. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. There is no contradiction. One describes sequence, the other describes state. The seed is not yet the tree you can sit beneath, yet life is already organized within it toward a particular expression. You do not pretend to sit beneath the seed. You simply do not call the seed empty, because the branches are not yet visible. Likewise, your chosen identity can contain a meaning before every outer consequence is mature. And you need not dig for evidence. You are allowed to let becoming remain quiet. Perhaps sleep is beginning to come closer now. Let it. You need not hold this distinction consciously through the night. If only a fragment remains, let it be enough. Meaning can arrive before possession, perhaps shorter. The meaning may be mine before the symbol is in my hands. Shorter still, the state can belong here. That is enough. The state can belong here. No need to name the state. Perhaps you know it. Perhaps it is belonging, support, love, capability, freedom, peace. Perhaps simply the sense that you are not outside your own life. Let that state sit near you without demanding proof. You do not have to embrace it with perfect confidence. You do not have to say mine loudly. Sometimes ownership is shown by how little noise it makes. Think of something that truly belongs in your ordinary life. You do not announce it every hour. You expect its presence. You allow it to be familiar. Perhaps the state you desire can begin becoming ordinary in the same way. Not tonight all at once. A little. 1 degree less foreign. That is enough. You have not been asked to possess the physical world with your imagination. You have been asked to notice what identity you inhabit before the physical world finishes its sentence. Circumstances are speaking. They have not finished. Do not interrupt them by declaring the worst ending. Let the sentence remain open. Meanwhile, you can choose who is listening. The abandoned self listens one way, the beloved self another. The helpless self hears one meaning, the capable self another. The homeless self interprets uncertainty one way. The one beginning to belong interprets it differently. Who listens matters, and you can become another listener before the final line arrives. That is ownership before possession, the ownership of perspective, the ownership of identity, the ownership of the meaning you permit into consciousness. No one has to know. No one has to applaud. No outward statement is necessary. You can lie exactly where you are and make the smallest inward change. The absence of the symbol no longer has exclusive rights over the meaning. It no longer owns the word love. It no longer owns the word security. It no longer owns dignity. It no longer owns belonging. It no longer owns peace. Those states return to you, perhaps not perfectly. Enough for tonight. And if the old identity says, but you do not have it yet, you need not argue. Yes, the outer thing may not yet be in my hands, and then silence. Do not add the old conclusion. No, therefore. That word has caused great suffering. I do not have it yet, therefore I am excluded. Remove the therefore. I do not have it yet, period. And I am still here. I am. From I am, another state can be chosen. The fact can remain. The identity can move. This is freedom. Perhaps the most practical freedom you can discover. You stop waiting for every fact to change before allowing consciousness to change its relation to the fact. And when the relation changes, the whole experience of the interval changes with it. You no longer live suspended. You no longer make the present a corridor, leading to the room where life finally begins. The corridor itself becomes part of life. You notice the walls. You breathe. You walk. You learn. You rest. Perhaps the door ahead opens tomorrow. Perhaps later. But you are not dead in the corridor. You belong to your life while traveling through it. That is the state I want for you. Not frantic certainty that everything must happen exactly as preferred, something stronger. An identity not destroyed by unfinished circumstances. A person who can desire without becoming deficiency. A person who can wait in time without becoming the one who waits, in essence. A person who can seek improvement without declaring the present self worthless. A person who can receive when receiving comes, because they have already learned not to make goodness foreign. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands, while its meaning has already been permitted into your identity. Perhaps now the sentence can begin fading. No need to repeat it. You have heard it. Let your hands become heavy. They do not need to hold the thing tonight. Let them be empty without interpreting emptiness. Empty hands can rest. They do not prove an empty life. Perhaps tomorrow those hands will work. Write, build, reach, receive, give, hold. Tonight they may simply lie still. There is something beautiful in an empty hand that no longer feels deprived. It is open, not grasping, not closed, open. Perhaps this is the posture of inner ownership, not clenching what is yours, not reaching desperately toward what is absent. Open enough to receive, relaxed enough not to demand. Your hands do not need the house in them. Home is too large for hands. They do not need to hold love. Love is not an object. They do not need to grip security. Security is not a stone. The states you seek cannot be contained physically. So let the hands rest. The meaning is nearer than the symbol. Belonging can be here. Dignity can be here. Capability can be here. Peace can be here. Support can become imaginable here. No outward claim. No deception. No pressure. Only permission. Permission for the desired state to stop living entirely in tomorrow. Perhaps you have kept it there for years. Tomorrow I will rest. Tomorrow I will feel worthy. Tomorrow I will believe. Tomorrow I will belong. Tonight, allow tomorrow to return one small piece, not the whole future. One piece. One breath of peace. One moment of dignity. One degree of belonging. One thought of capability. 1 minute without rehearsing scarcity. That is enough inner ownership for a sleeping mind. Do not ask it to become more. Let smallness protect you from effort. The state can grow familiar without being watched. A room becomes familiar by living in it, not by measuring it. Spend these last moments there. No furniture necessary. No picture. Perhaps only the sense that the meaning you have desired is allowed to be near. Allowed. Not forced. Allowed. The distinction may now dissolve into sleep, possession outside, ownership within, the symbol later, the state beginning now. No contradiction, no pretending. The outer world may continue unfolding in its own visible sequence. You do not have to drag it through the night. The thing may remain where it is. The person may remain where they are. The opportunity may remain unseen. The account may remain unchanged until morning. The house may remain elsewhere, and still something has been released from exile. The meaning. You have permitted it inward. Perhaps that is enough to make the night different. You are not holding the desired thing. You are no longer asking its absence to hold you. Feel the difference. You are not holding it. Its absence is not holding you. The hands are free. The mind may become free. The body may become heavy. No need to possess anything before sleep. No need to prove ownership. No need to say anything more. Let what is physical remain physical. Let what is inward become intimate. The symbol can wait outside consciousness. The state may sleep beside you. And perhaps, before long, even the word state will be unnecessary. There will simply be rest. A person at rest who has stopped calling the meaning of their own desire foreign. That is enough for tonight. More than enough. The outer thing may still be approaching your hands. You do not need to watch it approach. Its meaning has been allowed closer. Let the meaning become quiet. Let the wish become quiet. Let the hands become quiet. And sleep may come before anything else needs to arrive. Now I want you to look beneath the thing you say you want, not away from it, beneath it. For desire often arrives wearing a particular form, and because the form is visible to imagination, you may mistake the form for the whole desire. You say, I want money. I want the relationship. I want the position. I want the house. I want success. And naturally the mind begins constructing images around those things: a number, a face, a desk, a doorway, a room, a letter, a title, an audience. But I want you to ask a quieter question tonight. What do I believe this thing would permit me to feel? There is often another desire beneath the first desire. The first desire has a shape. The deeper desire has a quality. You may think you want money, and certainly money may be practically useful. It buys food. It pays obligations. It creates choices. It can give access to experiences, education, comfort, movement, assistance, and time. I am not going to tell you that money is merely an illusion and that you should forget practical conditions. But beneath the number, what are you truly seeking? Perhaps the number means that you can finally breathe without calculating every breath. Perhaps it means that when an unexpected expense appears, you do not feel that the floor has disappeared. Perhaps it means choice. Perhaps it means the ability to say no to something that diminishes you. Perhaps it means being able to help someone you love. Perhaps it means time. Perhaps it means no longer having every decision dictated by immediate survival. Perhaps money, to you, has become the symbol of being supported by life. Then notice what has happened. A number has become a container into which you have poured security, freedom, dignity, possibility, relief, and self-respect. And then you stare at the container and say, until I possess this, I may possess none of what I placed inside it. That is where suffering begins. You have made the symbol the keeper of the state. You have handed the key to a number. You say, when you are large enough, I will breathe. When you are large enough, I will walk differently. When you are large enough, I will stop being afraid. When you are large enough, I will finally permit myself to feel that life has room for me. Do you see the burden you have placed upon money? You are asking it not merely to perform its practical function. You are asking it to become a god that tells you whether you may feel safe, a god that tells you whether you are respectable, a god that tells you whether you have succeeded as a human being, a god whose mood changes whenever a number changes. Do not worship the symbol. Use it. Desire it if you wish. Earn it. Receive it. Manage it wisely. Enjoy what it permits. But do not kneel before it inwardly and say, you alone may tell me whether support belongs in my life. Support is a state larger than money. And when you begin to understand this, your desire becomes less desperate without becoming less meaningful. You can still desire greater financial stability. But now the desire no longer contains your entire right to breathe. That changes the one who meets financial circumstances. A frightened mind sees every figure as judgment. A mind becoming familiar with support sees figures as information. One reacts, the other considers. One says, this number means I am doomed. The other says, this number tells me what is presently required. Same figure, different person reading it. This is why I keep bringing you beneath the symbol. The symbol is not meaningless, but it is not the whole meaning. Perhaps your desire is a relationship. Then again I ask, what have you placed inside that symbol? A particular face may come to mind, a particular voice. Perhaps you imagine a hand in yours, a conversation late at night, a familiar presence beside you. Very well. But beneath the person, what is the state you seek? Perhaps intimacy, perhaps mutual recognition, perhaps the relief of not having to perform in order to be loved, perhaps the pleasure of being known deeply and remaining welcome. Perhaps you want to feel chosen, not as a prize, but as someone whose presence is genuinely desired. Perhaps you want to give affection without fearing it will be used against you. Perhaps you want to receive affection without wondering when it will disappear. Perhaps you want a place where tenderness is reciprocal. This is not merely a relationship. It is a whole inner climate, belonging, mutuality, trust, warmth, companionship. And once again, the danger is that you place all of these qualities inside one human being and then tell yourself that until that person behaves as you wish, none of these states are permitted to exist within you. Now the person has become another psychological god. One message lifts the sun. One silence brings winter. One expression grants belonging. One hesitation withdraws it. One affectionate gesture makes you worthy. One distance makes you an exile. This is too much power to give another human being, not because you should become cold, because love becomes more genuine when another person is not required to create your entire identity. If the relationship is mutual, cherish it. If another person freely loves you, receive that love. If a relationship requires communication, communicate. If it requires discernment, discern. If a person does not choose the same relationship you desire, their freedom matters. But none of this requires you to make yourself foreign to love. Another person's choice can decide whether that particular relationship exists. It cannot decide whether love itself belongs in the universe available to you. These are different questions. The first involves two people. The second involves the identity you permit yourself to inhabit. And tonight I am speaking about the second. If you remove the face for one moment, what remains? Belonging, perhaps, warmth, being seen, being respected, having room to be yourself. Let those meanings remain after the image fades. This is important because the mind can become so attached to the symbol that it forgets what the symbol was meant to serve. Imagine a traveler who becomes fascinated by the cup from which he expects to drink. He studies its shape, its color, its weight. He imagines holding it. He dreams of the day it will finally be his. But what did he originally want? Water. The cup mattered because it could carry water. Yet eventually the cup becomes sacred and the water forgotten. Human desire often does this. You begin by wanting a state. Then consciousness attaches the state to a form. Then the form becomes so important that you no longer recognize the state unless it arrives in exactly that container. You say, love must come through this cup. Security must come through this cup. Success must come through this cup. Freedom must come through this cup. And perhaps life contains cups you have not yet seen. I am not asking you to abandon your preferences. I am asking you not to imprison the meaning inside one form. The deeper state is larger. And the more intimately you know the state, the more clearly you can recognize forms that genuinely express it. This matters particularly in love. A person who is starving for belonging may mistake attention for love. Any cup appears precious when you believe there is no other water. But one who has begun inwardly to know dignity can ask better questions. Is this mutual? Is this kind? Is this relationship consistent with the belonging I no longer consider foreign? The state becomes a standard rather than a hunger. That is a profound change. You no longer ask only, can I get the symbol? You ask, does the symbol actually embody the state? This is why knowing what you really desire gives you discernment. Perhaps you desire a position, a particular kind of work, a promotion, a role, a place where your abilities can be used. And perhaps you think the desire is simply the title. But what lies beneath the title? Maybe usefulness, maybe direction, maybe the knowledge that your abilities have consequence, maybe being trusted with responsibility, maybe intellectual challenge, maybe recognition, maybe the pleasure of becoming highly skilled at something worthy of your attention. Maybe you want to wake in the morning and know where your energy is going. Maybe you want to finish the day tired from meaningful effort rather than exhausted from inner conflict. That is not a title. That is a way of living. And once you see that, you can begin asking whether portions of that state can exist before the appointment. Can you take your present work more seriously, because seriousness belongs to you, not because someone has already rewarded it? Can you learn because competence itself is satisfying? Can you become more useful where you stand without using usefulness as a bargain for approval? Can you recognize your own growth without waiting for a superior to announce it? Can direction begin as the decision to devote yourself to what matters? Again, none of this means the outer position is unimportant. A position can change income, responsibility, environment, opportunity. These are real. But if you give the position all authority over usefulness, you may obtain the title and remain inwardly lost. Then 6 months later, you ask for another title, more recognition, more evidence. The symbol changed. The deeper hunger remained unfed. This is why some people continue climbing ladders and cannot remember why they began climbing. At first they wanted expression, then they wanted recognition of expression, then recognition itself became the desire, then comparison entered. Then each rung was valuable only because another rung stood above it. The ladder became a machine that produced distance. No arrival could satisfy because the identity had become the one who must rise. You need not abandon ambition to be free of this. Ambition can be beautiful when it expresses vitality. Create, build, learn, improve, extend your usefulness. But let success serve life. Do not let life become a servant of success. There is a difference. Success may be one form through which dignity, contribution, and expression are experienced. It is not their creator. Perhaps your desire is a house. Think beneath the walls. Why that house? Why that room? Why that place? Perhaps you desire a garden because some part of you longs for quiet. Perhaps you desire a larger room because you want space that is not continually invaded. Perhaps you imagine closing the front door and feeling that what is outside may remain outside. Perhaps you long for permanence because you have moved too many times. Perhaps you long for a window with morning light because beauty has been postponed in your life. Perhaps you want somewhere to welcome others. Perhaps somewhere no one can suddenly tell you that you must leave. Then the house is carrying more than timber, brick, glass, and land. It carries rootedness, privacy, continuity, shelter, autonomy, home. These are powerful meanings, but be careful. If you say, I may not experience any rootedness until I own those walls, you turn your present life into a campsite. You become psychologically packed even when nothing requires you to leave. You never fully unpack yourself. You do not care for what is present because you believe real life begins elsewhere. You say, when I have the house, then I will make things beautiful. When I have the house, then I will rest. When I have the house, then I will invite life in. When I have the house, then I will become someone who belongs somewhere. And years may pass while consciousness lives out of boxes. Perhaps the desired house has not appeared. But must the whole inner state of home wait with it? What would it mean to unpack one part of yourself now? Perhaps caring for the room you have. Perhaps making one small corner beautiful. Not because this is the final place, but because you are someone whose life deserves habitation now. Perhaps closing the door tonight and allowing it to mean privacy rather than temporary shelter. Perhaps saying inwardly, I am not passing through my own existence. That is home beginning as identity. Then if the house comes, it meets a resident, not a lifelong refugee who has finally obtained walls, but still expects displacement. You see how the symbol and the state can support one another without becoming confused. The house is real. The state is real. They are not identical. Perhaps your desire is what you call success. That word is especially dangerous because everyone fills it differently. What do you mean by success? Not what would others recognize as success. What do you mean? Perhaps expression. You have something in you that wishes to become visible through work. Perhaps impact. You want what you create to matter beyond your private mind. Perhaps dignity. You are tired of feeling that your abilities have no place. Perhaps independence. You want greater control over your time and decisions. Perhaps recognition. You want to know that effort has been seen. All understandable. But notice again how easily success becomes a psychological deity. If enough people approve, I exist. If enough people admire, I matter. If enough people recognize the work, then the work was worthy. If enough evidence accumulates, then I may finally stop arguing with myself. But applause has never been qualified to settle an argument you insist on reopening. 1,000 people may praise a man who has already decided he is fraudulent. He will search among the 1,000 for the one who does not praise. and there he will find the confirmation he was seeking. The state always knows where to look. The overlooked self notices omission. The inadequate self notices criticism. The secure self can hear criticism without collapsing. The dignified self can enjoy praise without becoming dependent upon it. This is why the deeper desire matters. If success means expression, begin expressing. If it means contribution, ask what contribution looks like now. If it means dignity, do not postpone dignity until an audience gives it back to you. If it means mastery, practice mastery. Let the symbol grow around a state rather than demanding that the symbol manufacture the state. This changes ambition from desperation into movement. It becomes cleaner. You are not running from worthlessness towards success. You are expressing value through increasingly fitting forms. Feel the difference. One runs because something terrible is behind. The other moves because something meaningful is ahead. The pace may be equally strong. The inner world is entirely different. And perhaps tonight your desire concerns none of these things. Perhaps you want simply to feel free. Then ask, free from what? And beneath that, free for what? People often imagine freedom only as escape. Free from debt, free from a difficult situation, free from another person's influence, free from fear, free from an obligation, free from a place. But if freedom is only defined by what it escapes, then the prison remains central. Every thought of freedom still points backward to the wall. What will you do when the wall no longer matters? That question reveals the deeper state. Perhaps freedom means choice, perhaps movement, perhaps self-direction, perhaps the ability to hear your own mind again, perhaps the ability to plan without asking permission inwardly, perhaps the simple experience of waking without immediately remembering what you are trying to escape. That is deeper. Freedom is not merely the broken chain. It is the life that begins when you stop thinking about the chain. Then, even before every outer limitation changes, you may begin recovering pieces of that life. One inner argument ends. One old explanation is no longer repeated. One decision is made from your own values. 1 hour belongs to something other than the problem. Freedom starts gaining content. It becomes more than resistance. This is important because consciousness tends to become what it contemplates. If freedom is contemplated only through the prison, then the prison remains vivid. If prosperity is contemplated only through lack, lack remains vivid. If love is contemplated only through loneliness, loneliness remains vivid. If success is contemplated only through failure, failure remains vivid. Go beneath the contrast. What is the state itself? Not the absence of its opposite, the state. This is harder at first because the mind knows problems more intimately than fulfillment. Ask someone what they do not want, and they may speak for an hour. Ask what life feels like after the problem is no longer central, and silence appears. That silence is useful. Stay there. Perhaps you know beautifully what you wish to leave and have hardly considered what you wish to inhabit. Then desire has been acting mainly as escape. Tonight, let it become direction, not away from, toward a quality of being. What quality? Perhaps ease, perhaps reciprocity, perhaps rootedness, perhaps usefulness, perhaps expansion, perhaps dignity, perhaps peace, perhaps self-trust. Do not rush to choose one word. The word is not magic. I want the recognition. If your desire is difficult to name, let it remain unnamed. The deeper mind often understands before language does. You may simply ask, what would this give me permission to stop feeling? And then, what would be left? If money were sufficient, perhaps constant danger would diminish. What remains? Room. If love were secure, perhaps constant analysis would diminish. What remains? Warmth. If work were meaningful, perhaps uncertainty about usefulness would diminish. What remains? Direction. If the house were yours, perhaps temporary living would diminish. What remains? Rootedness. If success were integrated, perhaps proving would diminish. What remains? Expression. Often what remains after the old pressure is removed is closer to the actual state than the dramatic image of receiving. This is why I ask you to look beneath the symbol. You may discover that what you desire is quieter than you thought. You believed you wanted a great victory. Perhaps beneath it you wanted the end of proving. You believed you wanted enormous wealth. Perhaps beneath it you wanted to wake without fear. You believed you wanted to be adored. Perhaps beneath it you wanted to stop doubting whether intimacy was possible for you. You believed you wanted fame. Perhaps beneath it you wanted your work to matter. You believed you wanted escape. Perhaps beneath it you wanted to hear your own life again. When the deeper desire is seen, something softens. The symbol does not have to carry the entire burden. This does not diminish the symbol, it clarifies it. You can still say, yes, I desire this house, but you know why. I desire the home it represents. Then you may begin letting home become a state before the deed is in your hand. Yes, I desire greater income, but I know why. I desire room, support, choice, and capacity. Then you can begin practicing intelligent support, rather than rehearsing disaster while the number develops. Yes, I desire relationship, but I know why. I desire mutuality, tenderness, and belonging. Then you refuse relationships that offer possession without mutuality. Do you see how knowing the deeper state changes what you accept? This is one of the practical values of imagination. It does not merely help you picture what you want, it helps you discover what you actually want. A man may spend years chasing a symbol only to discover that the symbol, as offered, contradicts the state he desired. He wants success because he imagines freedom. Then he obtains a form of success that makes him more imprisoned than ever. If he knew the deeper state, he could ask whether the path and the form actually serve it. He wants relationship because he imagines belonging. Then he accepts a relationship requiring him to abandon himself. The symbol is present. The state is absent. He has the cup. There is no water. Therefore do not worship form. Ask what it carries. The form matters, but meaning tells you why. And this is where your nightly imagination can become much more refined. Instead of constructing grand scenes, perhaps you allow one small moment in which the deeper quality is present. If the quality is security, what is an ordinary moment of security? Maybe you are sitting at a table reading something unrelated to money. Notice that. Why unrelated? Because money is no longer consuming all attention. That implies something. If the quality is belonging, perhaps you are in a quiet room and do not feel compelled to earn anyone's presence. No face necessary. The body is not pleading. That implies something. If the quality is usefulness, perhaps you finish a piece of work and simply know it was worth doing. No applause, no audience. The work itself has meaning. That implies something. If the quality is home, perhaps you turn off a lamp before bed, with the simple feeling that you have nowhere else you need to be. That implies something. If the quality is freedom, perhaps tomorrow enters the mind and there is no immediate internal argument. That implies something. These are not spectacular scenes. That is precisely why they can become natural. The mind often imagines desire through its highest dramatic moment because drama is easy to recognize. The wedding, the check, the promotion, the key, the applause, the departure. But life after fulfillment is mostly made of ordinary minutes. And if you want the state to feel like yours, ordinary minutes are often better teachers than dramatic ones. Imagine someone receives a great sum today. There may be excitement. Tomorrow perhaps more excitement. But eventually they make tea. They sit by a window. They read. They think about something unrelated. The money exists without occupying consciousness. That is integration. Imagine someone enters a loving relationship. At first there may be great emotion. Months later they sit together in silence. Nothing needs to be proved. One reads. The other looks outside. That silence may contain more secure love than the first passionate declaration, because no one is checking whether love is present. It has become background. Imagine success. The first recognition may be thrilling. Later you are simply at your desk doing the next piece of work. No music. No announcement. The work continues. That ordinary continuation may reveal the state more deeply than the applause. Desire wants the climax. Fulfillment lives after the climax. Remember that. Desire is fascinated by the moment the symbol arrives. Fulfillment becomes interested in the life the symbol enters. So I ask you, what life are you really asking for? Not what event, what life? What inner climate? What becomes ordinary there? What no longer requires effort there? Perhaps the answer is more useful than another image of the object itself. And because this is night, you do not need to answer consciously. Let the question go downward. What do I really want beneath the thing? Perhaps the mind begins naming things: security, love, freedom. Do not cling to the words. Words are labels upon deeper sensations. Perhaps the body knows. Security may feel like not bracing. Belonging may feel like not performing. Freedom may feel like not arguing. Dignity may feel like not shrinking. Support may feel like not calculating every possible disaster. Success may feel like having something meaningful to give the day. Home may feel like the end of inward wandering. Let the body recognize what language cannot fully describe. And if nothing comes, no matter. You are not required to solve desire tonight. Sometimes merely knowing that the symbol is not the whole desire creates enough space. The object becomes less tyrannical. It can return to being an object. Money can be money. A relationship can be a relationship. A position can be a position. A house can be a house. Recognition can be recognition. Useful, beautiful, desired, but not divine. No object should have to carry your entire identity. Nothing outside should be forced to become the sole source of an inward state. This is what I mean when I tell you not to make the external thing a god. A god decides whether you may live. A god decides whether you are blessed or cursed. A god decides whether you have value. Do not give a bank balance this authority. Do not give another person this authority. Do not give a title this authority. Do not give a property this authority. Do not give applause this authority. Let them remain important where they are important, and let being remain deeper. You are before all of them. I am. Before money. I am. Before relationship. I am. Before success. I am. Before recognition. I am. Before the house. And from I am, these forms may be desired without becoming creators of your existence. This is where desire becomes clean. You can say, I would love that, without adding, and without it I am nothing. You can say, I prefer this, without adding, until it happens I cannot live. You can say, I intend to move toward this, without adding, my present identity is failure. You can love a form without worshipping it. That is freedom within desire. And perhaps this freedom itself begins changing what you can perceive. A person obsessed with one form may overlook another opportunity carrying the same state. A person convinced love must arrive through one doorway may fail to notice genuine reciprocity elsewhere. A person convinced success must bear one title may miss work that expresses their deepest capacity more fully. A person convinced freedom requires one dramatic escape may overlook the small decisions through which freedom is already being constructed. A person convinced security is only one number may ignore skills, relationships, knowledge, opportunities, habits, and resources that are also part of support. Knowing the deeper state makes consciousness more intelligent. It does not make you passive. It expands the field. You stop dictating that meaning can enter through only one narrow gate. And tonight, perhaps that is especially restful. You do not have to know the exact gate. The state may become familiar, while the form remains unknown. Perhaps you desire what you currently call one thing, and life eventually teaches you that the deeper desire was larger than that form. That is all right. Desire can clarify as you grow. You are not signing an eternal contract with every image you have ever wanted. You are discovering the quality of life that feels true to you. There is room for refinement, room for surprise, room for better forms than those you currently know how to imagine. You do not need to control every detail before sleep. Perhaps you have been holding the symbol so tightly because you fear that if you release its exact form, you will receive nothing. But releasing worship is not abandoning preference. You may still know what you want. You simply stop saying, only this object can grant me the state. There is a difference. Hold the preference lightly. Hold the state intimately. That is a beautiful distinction. The form can be held lightly. The state can be held intimately. Perhaps love is the state. The exact road to relationship can remain lighter. Perhaps support is the state. The exact sequence of financial changes may remain unseen. Perhaps useful expression is the state. The exact title may evolve. Perhaps home is the state. The road to the final house may contain places you cannot predict. The state is close. The route may remain open. This allows the mind to rest. You no longer need to build the entire future before sleep. You only need to know what kind of being you are permitting closer. And perhaps now, even that is too much to think about. Good. We can make it simpler. Under the thing is a meaning. Under the meaning is a state. And the state can become less foreign tonight. That is all. Under the money, perhaps support. Under the relationship, perhaps belonging. Under the work, perhaps usefulness. Under the home, perhaps rootedness. Under success, perhaps expression. Let the symbols fade one by one. You do not need the number in your mind. Let it fade. What remains? Perhaps room. Let the face fade. What remains? Perhaps warmth. Let the title fade. What remains? Perhaps capability. Let the house fade. What remains? Perhaps home. Let the applause fade. What remains? Perhaps the pleasure of having something worth expressing. Stay with what remains, not intensely. Just notice that the state did not disappear when the symbol disappeared. This is important. If the symbol can fade from imagination while its meaning remains, then the two were never identical. You can let the picture go. The deeper desire is still understood. Perhaps this is why sleep is so useful. Sleep eventually takes every picture. Even the clearest image dissolves. The face disappears. The room disappears. The imagined check disappears. The words disappear. But a mood can remain longer than an image, a quiet orientation, a sense, a familiarity, and eventually even the sense may dissolve into sleep. That is all right. You do not need to carry the symbol into unconsciousness. Let it go. You know what it meant. Perhaps the deeper state can be communicated by something simpler than thought. The jaw releases. The shoulders no longer need to prove. The hands stop grasping. The stomach stops preparing for tomorrow, for 1 minute. The body says what the mind has been trying to say. I do not need to worship this thing. I may desire it. I may welcome it. I may work intelligently toward conditions I prefer. But I will not place my entire right to be at peace inside it. That right is too intimate. Perhaps there is something you have wanted so intensely that even considering this feels frightening. You may think, if I stop needing it so much, perhaps it will mean I have given up. No. Need and preference are not the same. Desperation and devotion are not the same. You can remain devoted to a direction without remaining devoted to suffering. A sailor may know where he wishes to go without cursing every mile before arrival. He is still traveling. The sea between is still life. Likewise, you can desire an outer change without making every moment before it empty. The state beneath the desire gives you something to live now, not a substitute, a beginning. Perhaps this is the deepest value of discovering what you actually want. You stop sacrificing the present entirely to the future. You begin allowing small portions of the desired quality into ordinary life. If you want freedom, make one decision tonight that freedom would approve of. Perhaps that decision is simply not to continue an old imaginary argument. If you want peace, do not demand that every problem disappear. Let one problem wait until morning. If you want dignity, stop speaking to yourself with contempt for the remainder of this night. If you want belonging, cease making yourself an exile for the next few breaths. If you want support, allow the bed beneath you to demonstrate that receiving support does not always require effort. These small experiences are not the final symbol. They are the state becoming less foreign. And this is enough. The desire no longer needs to shout. It has been understood. It was never only saying, give me that object. It was saying, there is a quality of being you have associated with that object. Come closer to the quality. Learn its atmosphere. Discover its ordinary form. Stop treating it as a country inhabited only by others. Then the desire begins becoming a teacher instead of a tormentor. What a different relationship. Instead of asking, why do I not have this yet? You can ask, what state has this desire been trying to reveal? Instead of staring at the symbol, you listen for the meaning. Perhaps tonight the answer comes. Perhaps not. No matter. The question itself changes your direction. You move from acquisition toward understanding, and understanding softens desperation, not because you care less, because you know more precisely what you care about. Perhaps you thought you wanted to be admired, but beneath admiration, you wanted freedom from self-doubt. Then perhaps the deepest work is not gathering more eyes, it is ending the habit of putting yourself on trial. Perhaps you thought you wanted another person to return, but beneath their return, you wanted the feeling that you were not disposable. Then, even while you honor the reality of that relationship, you can begin withdrawing the word disposable from your identity. Perhaps you thought you wanted wealth because you wanted luxury. But beneath luxury, you discover you wanted choice. Then every intelligent increase in choice becomes meaningful. Perhaps you thought you wanted a grand home, but beneath grandeur you wanted peace. Then you stop postponing every form of peace until the larger rooms appear. This is not settling. It is refusing to starve psychologically, while moving toward a fuller expression. The traveler may desire a banquet at the destination and still accept water on the road. He does not say, I refuse every drop because it is not yet the feast. Drink what belongs to the state now. One breath of peace, one moment of dignity, one thought of possibility, one small act of self-respect. Let these nourish the journey. Then when the outer form arrives, you are not meeting it as someone who has been starving at its altar. You can recognize what it can give and what it cannot. Money can give options. It cannot guarantee inner peace. Another person can love you. They cannot live your entire relationship with yourself for you. Success can create influence. It cannot make self-contempt impossible. A house can shelter the body. It cannot force the mind to feel at home. Recognition can acknowledge work. It cannot make you stop reopening the question of your worth. Know the limits of symbols. Then you can enjoy them more. You do not ask them to perform miracles outside their nature. A chair may support the body. You do not ask it to answer the meaning of life. Why ask a number to answer the meaning of you? Let things be things. Let states be states. Let people be people. Let being be deeper than all of them. Perhaps this is what brings true quiet. The world no longer has to carry such an impossible burden tonight. The person you desire does not have to decide your eternal lovability while they sleep. The employer does not have to decide your entire usefulness before morning. The bank does not have to decide your dignity. The landlord or property deed does not decide whether you belong in existence. An audience does not decide whether your inner gifts have value. Everyone may be released from these jobs. Even the future may be released. Tomorrow does not have to manufacture you. You are here. I am. And from this simple being, you can become familiar with what the symbols represented. Perhaps that is enough to make your desire gentler. Let it become gentle. You do not have to hold it tightly. Perhaps it sits somewhere in the background now. Fine. The desire can become background. The state can become atmosphere. You need not know which word describes it. Maybe the atmosphere is simply less pressure. That is enough. Less pressure. The thing is no longer a god. It is a desired thing. There is relief in returning it to its proper size. You may want it deeply, but it does not own the night. You may welcome it warmly, but it does not own your name. You may prefer it strongly, but it does not possess your right to rest. The body can sleep without waiting for permission from the symbol. Perhaps you hear how quiet this becomes. Money may sleep as a thought. Love may sleep as a thought. Success may sleep. The house may sleep. The opportunity may sleep. You do not have to bring every symbol into the bed. Let them remain outside the room for a while. What you really wanted beneath them is nearer. Perhaps peace. Perhaps belonging. Perhaps security enough for this hour. Perhaps dignity. Perhaps the simple sensation that life is not excluding you from itself. Let that be near. No need to name it. No need to intensify it. No need to convert it into evidence. If it is only a tiny softness in the mind, that is enough. If nothing is felt, that is allowed too. You have understood the distinction. The symbol is not the state. The cup is not the water. The doorway is not the home. The title is not the capability. The applause is not the value. The number is not the whole of support. The person is not the author of love itself. And because you know this, Perhaps you can desire without kneeling. You can imagine without begging. You can prefer without disappearing into the preference. You can sleep before possession, because the deeper meaning no longer seems entirely beyond you. Let the symbols fade now. No need to carry them. There is nothing to worship in the dark. There is only awareness, breath, the body becoming heavier, the day moving farther away, and somewhere beneath everything you thought you wanted, a quieter desire revealing itself. Not give me the object so that I may finally become, but allow me to become familiar with the state the object has always represented. That state may come closer now, gently, without announcement, without proof, without requiring you to stay awake and watch. Let it come as naturally as darkness enters a room after the lamp is lowered. No force. The symbol may disappear. The meaning remains. Then the meaning may grow quiet too. And perhaps, for tonight, quiet itself is enough. And now, as this night comes toward its quiet conclusion, I want you to notice how far you have moved from the place where you began. At the beginning, perhaps you came here wanting something, wanting an answer, wanting a person, wanting money, wanting opportunity, wanting peace, wanting a different life. And because the desire mattered, you may have believed that your task was to somehow reach across the distance and bring it toward you. You may have thought belief was the force required to pull the future closer. You may have thought you had to repeat the right words until the mind surrendered. You may have thought you had to create an emotion so convincing that doubt could no longer survive. You may have thought you had to hold the picture perfectly. You may have thought you had to fall asleep with absolute certainty. You may have thought that if you questioned once, worried once, remembered the old condition once, you had somehow undone everything. But I have not brought you through this night in order to make you a better guard of your desire. I have brought you here so that perhaps you can stop guarding it. For what you truly accept within does not require a guard. You were never required to spend the night keeping watch over a thought. You were never required to hold an image before your mind until exhaustion carried you into sleep. You were never required to convince yourself that an outer fact had already happened. You were invited to stop giving its absence the power to make fulfillment feel foreign to you. That is the distinction. And if you understand nothing else, understand that. The purpose was never to deny what your eyes can see. It was never to call an empty hand full. It was never to call a relationship present when no mutual relationship exists. It was never to call money available when it is not available. It was never to call a position yours when it has not been given. That would make imagination the enemy of intelligence. I would have imagination become something nobler, the place where identity is no longer dictated entirely by the visible moment. The place where you can say, this is the present fact, but this fact does not possess the whole meaning of me. The account may show what it shows. It need not name your dignity. A person may make the choice they make. Their freedom does not become the author of your lovability. An opportunity may be delayed. Delay does not become incapability. A home may not yet be yours. You do not therefore have to wander psychologically through every hour of your life. A difficulty may remain to be solved. You are not required to make difficulty the atmosphere of the entire night. This is where inner freedom begins, not in the denial of fact, in the refusal to let one fact occupy every room of consciousness. You have given circumstances too much property within you. A small event enters, and immediately it is given the largest chamber. A silence enters and occupies the whole house. A number enters and begins speaking from every room. An old memory arrives, and suddenly it has the keys. Tonight, perhaps, you have been quietly taking some of those keys back. Not through battle, through recognition. This belongs to circumstance. That belongs to identity. They are not the same. And once you see this, you no longer need to convince yourself quite so violently. For what was the argument really about? You were saying, it is mine. And the senses were saying, not yet in the outer form. Then you believed one side had to defeat the other. No. Let each speak about its own domain. The senses may describe the present arrangement. Imagination may choose the state from which you relate to that arrangement. There is no need for war. The house may not yet be yours. That is a physical fact. Belonging need not therefore remain foreign. No contradiction. The desired relationship may not exist. That is a relational fact. You need not therefore make exile from love your identity. No contradiction. The money may not yet be present. That is a financial fact. You need not therefore call panic your natural home. No contradiction. The recognition may not yet have come. That is an external fact. Dignity need not therefore wait outside with it. No contradiction. Do you see how much strain disappears when you stop asking imagination to falsify the world? It becomes free to do something more intimate, to reveal the self you would rather inhabit, while the world continues unfolding. And perhaps this is what already yours means at the deepest level of this night. Not that everything you prefer has already been placed physically into your hands, but that the qualities of being you have assigned entirely to tomorrow can begin returning to you now. The right to breathe before the number changes, the right to belong before someone approves, the right to respect yourself before the audience applauds, the right to feel capable while still learning, the right to rest before every question has been answered, the right to imagine a life that is not merely a repetition of what has already happened. These do not require permission from tomorrow, and once you understand that, belief itself changes. Belief no longer means forcing yourself to say yes louder than fear says no. Belief becomes less dramatic. It becomes the quiet weakening of foreignness. A state that once felt impossible becomes conceivable. What was conceivable becomes familiar. What was familiar becomes ordinary. And what becomes ordinary no longer demands that you think about it constantly. This is why I have led you away from intensity. Because longing often burns hotter than possession. The one outside the gate may think about the house all day. The one who lives there eventually thinks about supper. This is not loss, it is integration. You wanted fulfillment to enter life. Then let it become part of life. Do not keep it upon an altar forever. Do not spend every day bowing to the symbol. Let money return to being money. Let relationship return to being relationship. Let work return to being work. Let a home be a home. Let recognition be recognition. Useful, meaningful, beautiful perhaps, but no longer gods who decide whether you may exist with dignity. You can desire deeply without worshipping. You can prefer strongly without disappearing into the preference. You can act intelligently without making every action a plea. You can work without asking the work to prove your worth. You can love without asking another person to manufacture your entire capacity for belonging. You can plan financially without turning every figure into judgment. You can pursue a home without treating your present life as though it were merely a waiting room. This is how desire becomes cleaner. It is no longer required to rescue you from the identity you keep renewing. And perhaps this is the greatest movement you have made tonight. You began with the question, how do I get it? You end with another question. Who am I while it is still unfolding? That question returns power to the place where power can actually be exercised. Not over every person, not over every event, not over every timetable, but over the meanings you repeatedly consent to call yourself. You may not control whether someone says yes. You can stop making one no mean that love itself has rejected you. You may not control whether a door opens tomorrow. You can stop making one closed door proof that you have no place. You may not control every financial condition immediately. You can stop allowing fear to present itself as the only intelligent response. You may not control how quickly the body moves through every difficulty. You can still refuse to reduce the whole of being to one condition. This is not small. It changes the one who meets life, and the one who meets life matters. A person who believes themselves perpetually excluded looks at possibility differently from one who has stopped calling belonging foreign. A person convinced of permanent helplessness meets difficulty differently from one who has begun to know capability as a familiar companion. The event may be the same. The listener is different. The interpreter is different. The next movement may therefore be different. This is why state matters. Not because you must use it as a superstition. Because identity organizes attention. Identity gives meaning. Identity influences what you notice, what you tolerate, what you attempt, what you abandon, what you receive, what you fear, what you interpret as proof. Change the state, and you change the place from which the next moment is met. That is sufficient. You do not need to decorate the principle with promises. The inner change has value before you know every outer consequence. Peace is valuable because peace is valuable. Dignity because dignity is valuable. Belonging because exile has become too expensive psychologically. Support because panic has had enough of your attention. Capability because you are tired of making every mistake a verdict. The state itself matters. Let that be enough. There is a strange freedom in no longer using every good thought as a tool. Perhaps you have scarcely allowed yourself a peaceful moment without asking what it will produce. You relax and wonder whether relaxation will help. You imagine and wonder whether the image will become fact. You affirm and immediately ask whether the words are working. You feel gratitude and then inspect the future. Everything has become machinery. Tonight, let one inner state exist without being employed. Let peace be unemployed. Let peace sit quietly without having to manifest anything. Let belonging exist without being sent to retrieve a person. Let support exist without being ordered to retrieve money. Let dignity exist without being asked to retrieve applause. Let capability exist without being commanded to retrieve success. Do you feel how different that is? A state may simply be lived. You do not have to send it out to perform labor. You may enjoy the state because it is a better home. Then if tomorrow brings practical action, the state can accompany you. But tonight it has no assignment, nothing to accomplish, nothing to prove, nothing to fetch from the future. And perhaps for the first time you begin to understand why the wish can become quiet. You once thought quiet meant the wish was dying. Perhaps it means the wish no longer needs to scream in order to remain known. The deepest desires can survive silence. You know what you wanted. You do not need to repeat the request all night. There is a point when asking becomes unnecessary, not because the outer answer has necessarily arrived, but because the desire itself has already revealed what you needed to understand about your chosen state. You wanted money. It revealed support. You wanted relationship. It revealed belonging. You wanted success. It revealed expression. You wanted a home. It revealed rootedness. You wanted freedom. It revealed a life no longer organized around the prison. The symbol pointed. Now you know where it pointed. You can let the finger lower. No need to keep pointing at the moon after you have seen it. The hand can rest. The wish can rest. And perhaps you can rest too. You have carried desire like a parcel for so long, always checking whether it was still there, always feeling its weight. Perhaps now you realize the parcel contained a message. You have read the message. You do not have to carry the box forever. What did it say? Perhaps you wish to know belonging. You wish to know support. You wish to know peace. You wish to know usefulness. You wish to know freedom. Very well. These states can become familiar, not instantly, not through force, but through residence. This is the direction you now understand. And with understanding comes a different kind of patience, not the patience of someone staring at a clock. That is still waiting. I mean the patience of someone who no longer needs every minute to report progress. A tree does not watch its own branches lengthen. You may say you have heard this metaphor before, and perhaps you have, but look at the deeper implication. Growth that must be constantly measured becomes a burden. You do not need to measure tonight. You do not need to know whether belief grew by 1 degree. You do not need to know whether the state is deeper than yesterday. You do not need to know whether something unseen is moving. These questions can return tomorrow if they have practical meaning. Most of them do not. Most are simply the old desire for reassurance wearing spiritual clothing. Is it working? Am I doing it right? Did I feel enough? Did I imagine enough? Is the state impressed? Will it happen now? Enough. You do not need to answer. The night has no examination at the end. There is no certificate for perfect belief. No one is standing beside your bed with a ledger. No one is counting the moments you doubted. No one is subtracting points because your mind wandered. No desired state is destroyed because you became human for 15 minutes. Let this superstition leave you. A thought is not a thunderbolt. A doubt is not a curse. A passing emotion is not a contract. You do not have to fear your own mind. This may be one of the most important freedoms of all. If you fear every thought, you become a servant of thought. The mind produces something unpleasant, and immediately you run, correct it, replace it, neutralize it. You live as though consciousness were filled with traps. No. Let thoughts pass. Choose what you repeatedly inhabit. That is enough. A bird may fly through your garden without becoming the owner of the garden. A doubtful thought may cross awareness without becoming your identity. You need not chase the bird. You need not build a nest for it either. Let it pass. This is maturity. And a mature state can sleep. A fragile state believes it must remain awake. A mature state knows it can contain weather. You can have a difficult day and still return. You can feel fear and still return. You can become discouraged and still return. You can forget everything I have said and still return the moment you remember. What is return? Not a ceremony. Simply the recognition that the old state does not have exclusive rights over you. Perhaps you notice yourself thinking from rejection. You remember. Belonging is also available. That is return. You notice catastrophe building. You remember. I do not know the whole future. Return. You notice yourself turning one mistake into identity. You remember. This is an event, not a name. Return. Nothing more. No punishment for having wandered. A traveler who misses one turn does not have to destroy the carriage and begin the journey from childhood. He turns around. Continue. This is how I want persistence to feel after tonight. Return without drama, not clenched determination, not fear that one wrong thought ruins everything. Return. The more natural the return becomes, the more familiar the state becomes. And perhaps one day there is less need to return because you did not leave so completely. Then another day, the state is simply where you are. No announcement, no great moment. You do not wake and hear trumpets. You notice that an old question has not been asked in a while. When? Strange. You forgot to ask. Do they want me? You became busy living. Will there be enough? You dealt with the facts without spending the whole day rehearsing ruin. Am I capable? You started the work before finishing the debate. This is naturalization, a question quietly becoming obsolete. Perhaps this is a better sign of inner fulfillment than excitement. The disappearance of old questions, not because every outer fact is perfect, because the identity that required those questions is no longer being fed every hour. You do not have to kill the old self. You may simply stop consulting it. That is enough. The old self may knock occasionally. I have an opinion about this. No need to answer. I think you should worry. Perhaps not tonight. I think this silence means rejection. Maybe, maybe not. I think this delay means failure. You do not know. The old interpreter loses authority when every sentence is no longer treated as law. You are not arguing with it. You simply stopped appointing it judge. This creates quiet. And quiet is what I want now. Not because there is nothing more to say. There will always be more words. But because words must eventually know when to leave. A teacher may speak for hours. But if the student is to sleep, even the teacher must leave the room. So let these ideas begin releasing you. You do not have to hold them. Nothing needs to be proved. Let that sentence settle. Nothing needs to be proved. You do not need to prove to yourself that you believe. You do not need to prove to the world that you are worthy. You do not need to prove to another person that you deserve love. You do not need to prove to the past that it was wrong. You do not need to prove to tomorrow that you are ready. For tonight, nothing needs to be proved. Perhaps there are things tomorrow that require evidence, work, communication, decisions. Fine. Tomorrow has not been abolished. But tonight is not a courtroom. Nothing needs to be proved, and nothing needs to be watched. You have watched enough. You have watched the door, watched the account, watched the calendar, watched the expressions of others, watched your own feelings, watched your belief, watched the state, watched for signs, watched for change, watched yourself watching. Enough. Nothing needs to be watched. The night can continue without supervision. There are countless processes in life you do not oversee. The earth turns without your instruction. Morning approaches without your concentration. The body continues its quiet work while consciousness sleeps. You permit these things every night. Permit the future to remain unwatched too. The future may remain unseen. That is allowed. You do not need to imagine every bridge. You do not need to construct every conversation. You do not need to decide how someone must behave. You do not need to know which opportunity appears. You do not need to know exactly how a financial condition changes. You do not need to see every step between here and the life you prefer. The future may remain unseen. Unseen is not the same as empty. Unseen simply means not presently visible. Let the unknown recover its innocence. You have made the unknown frightening because you filled it with old predictions. Tomorrow has not yet spoken, and you answered for it. You said, difficult. You said rejection. You said more of the same. You said disappointment. But tomorrow was silent. Perhaps let it remain silent. The future may remain unseen. No need to paint darkness with fear. Darkness can simply be darkness, and the wish may become quiet. You do not lose the wish by allowing silence around it. It is known. No need to repeat. The wish may become quiet. Perhaps the face fades. Let it. Perhaps the number fades. Let it. Perhaps the house fades. Perhaps the title. Perhaps the conversation. Perhaps everything you have been picturing so carefully becomes indistinct. Let it. The image may fade. The state is not a photograph. You can release the image. You do not have to keep the picture bright through the night. The image may fade. Perhaps only a sense remains. Then the sense may fade too. Fine. The words may fade. You do not need to remember every sentence. You do not need to repeat what I say. The words may fade. The idea may become less clear. That is sleep approaching. Let meaning become less grammatical, less organized. You do not need to understand in paragraphs now. Perhaps only fragments. Mine within. Rest. No reaching, no watching. Nothing to prove. The future unseen. The wish quiet. The image fading. The words fading. This is enough. You may have come here hoping that one sentence would finally convince you. Perhaps now you understand there was never a final sentence. Belief does not arrive because language corners you and leaves no escape. That would be persuasion. Belief arrives when the state stops requiring an argument. You cannot argue yourself into home. At some point, you simply become familiar enough that you stop asking whether you are allowed to be there. This is why you never needed to convince yourself. Convincing was only necessary while you believed the desired state was foreign. You were presenting evidence to a border guard within yourself. Here are my affirmations. Here is my visualization. Here is my feeling. May I enter? But who appointed the guard? Perhaps an old experience. Perhaps another person's opinion. Perhaps years of habit. Perhaps fear. You do not need to overthrow the guard tonight. Walk past the desk in imagination. Or perhaps there is no desk. Perhaps the border itself was drawn upon a map you inherited and never examined. You thought love belonged to another country. Support belonged elsewhere. Success elsewhere. Peace elsewhere. You kept applying for permission. What if these states were never foreign countries? What if they were rooms within consciousness that had simply remained unfamiliar because you rarely entered them? Then nothing outside has to grant citizenship. You can become acquainted. This is the quieter interpretation of already yours. The state is not foreign territory. It is available to awareness. You may enter without claiming that every outer symbol has already changed. This is sane. This is gentle. This is enough. Perhaps you are beginning to feel how tired the old traveler is. Always crossing borders. Always carrying papers. Always trying to prove the right to enter a better state. Let the traveler sit down. No destination tonight. No official. No gate. Perhaps only a bench beneath a night sky. The bag beside you. Nothing urgent. You know where you have been. You do not know exactly where morning will find you. That is all right. The road can continue without being imagined. The body rests. The mind loosens. Somewhere a clock may be moving. You do not need to count. You have counted enough. Days, weeks, attempts, signs, failures, successes, repetitions. Enough counting. The night has no number. Let time become vague. Perhaps you no longer know how long you have been listening. Good. Measurement is leaving. You do not need to know how near sleep is. Sleep comes badly when constantly measured. Belief 2. Let both arrive without clocks. Nothing needs to be proved. Nothing needs to be watched. The future may remain unseen. The wish may become quiet. The image may fade. The words may fade. And perhaps beneath all of that, there is simply the awareness that what you desire no longer has to remain psychologically on the other side of the world. The state can be near, very near, perhaps not even near, here. Not the object, the state, here. Support can be here as the willingness not to predict disaster. Belonging can be here as the refusal to exile yourself. Dignity can be here as the end of self-contempt for this night. Capability can be here as the quiet knowledge that what you do not know can be learned. Peace can be here as the permission to stop solving what cannot be solved at this hour. These are honest forms of inner ownership. No spectacle, no deception, no need to tell anyone. No one has to see the change. It can be private enough that even you barely notice. Perhaps the most important transformations begin without witnesses. A sentence that you used to repeat is simply not repeated. A fear that used to be fed goes unfed. A question that used to occupy an hour occupies 5 minutes. A criticism that used to become identity remains criticism. No one applauds, yet the inner architecture is changing. A doorway where there was a wall, a window opened, a chair moved, more room. This is enough. And if tomorrow you do not feel transformed, remember that ordinary change rarely announces itself with a trumpet. You may only notice later. Do not wake and inspect. Please do not turn morning into an examination. Do not ask the first moment you open your eyes, do I believe now? Let morning be morning. Perhaps wash, dress, eat, walk. Begin the day. Let state reveal itself in ordinary responses. And if the old response appears, return gently. No drama, no starting over. Nothing was destroyed. You are learning familiarity. A new room can remain your chosen direction, even if you accidentally walk into the old one. Leave when you notice. This is enough persistence. You do not have to carry tonight like a fragile object into tomorrow. Let the night end. You are not required to remember me. You are not required to remember every idea. If one thing remains, perhaps let it be the absence of pressure. No need to convince. No need to convince. The phrase itself can slow. You never needed to convince yourself. You only needed to stop treating every old conclusion as unquestionable. You only needed to stop making absence the sole interpreter of desire. You only needed to become willing for fulfillment to feel less foreign. And perhaps that willingness has already been enough for this night. No more. Do not ask more from yourself now. The body has listened long enough. The mind has considered long enough. Let the intelligence beneath conscious effort have quiet. You need not drag a thought into sleep. The thought may remain upon the shore. You may drift. Imagine a small boat tied to a wooden post. All day the rope has been pulled tight by the current. The boat points outward, wanting to move, yet remains held. You have spent hours trying to row while still tied. More effort, more rowing, more frustration. Perhaps tonight you notice the rope. The rope is not lack of desire. The rope is the identity that says you are always the one trying to get there. You do not need stronger arms. Untie the boat. Then perhaps do not row at all. Let the water carry you for a while. You do not need to know every bend in the river. You do not need to remain awake at the bow. The current can move beneath darkness. And if the boat metaphor disappears, let it disappear. No need to follow. The mind is allowed to become less coherent now. Perhaps only phrases. No reaching, no proving, no watching, no forcing. The state may be near. The state may be familiar. The state may be allowed. It is mine within. Not the person, not another's freedom, not a thing falsely claimed. The meaning, the inner permission, the chosen state. It is mine within, and I no longer need to reach for it. It is mine within. I rest. No need to repeat it many times. But perhaps repetition is pleasant now, because the meaning is getting lighter, not heavier. It is mine within. I rest. What is mine within does not need to be displayed. It does not need witnesses. It does not need applause. It does not need to be shouted. It does not need to be proven against the evidence. It can coexist with an unfinished world. That may be the deepest strength of all. An unfinished world, and a state not destroyed by unfinishedness. You do not have to complete the world before sleeping. What arrogance and exhaustion that would require. Let the world remain unfinished, letters unanswered, plans incomplete, numbers changing, relationships developing or ending, work waiting, questions open. Let it all remain unfinished. Creation is full of unfinished things. A manuscript on a desk, a building with scaffolding, a child still growing, a field before harvest, a journey before arrival. Unfinished does not mean failed. It means still in time. Let time have its part. You do not need to rush every unfinished thing to conclusion before dawn. Your task tonight is simpler. Do not make unfinished mean unworthy. Do not make unfinished mean impossible. Do not make unfinished mean abandoned. Let unfinished simply mean unfinished. And rest. Perhaps the wish itself is unfinished in the visible world. Fine. The state need not therefore be banished. It is mine within. I rest. Perhaps doubt is unfinished too. Perhaps some remains. Fine. You do not need to remove the final doubt. The room can contain it. Let doubt lie quietly somewhere far from the bed. No one needs to speak to it. Perhaps it falls asleep before you. Nothing needs to be proved. Nothing needs to be watched. The future may remain unseen. The wish may become quiet. The image may fade. The words may fade. It is mine within. I rest. And if even it is mine within becomes too much language, let mine go. Within. Then perhaps within goes too. Only rest. No philosophy. No method. No law to hold. Just rest. You have spent enough of your life treating consciousness like machinery that must be operated correctly. Press this thought. Pull that feeling. Repeat this sentence. Avoid that doubt. Tonight, perhaps consciousness can return to being something simpler. The awareness in which all of those things come and go. A thought appears. Awareness. A sensation. Awareness. An image. Awareness. Desire. Awareness. Fear. Awareness. And before each description, I am. You do not need to add fulfilled. You do not need to add wealthy, loved, successful, free. Even those are garments. For a moment, simply, I am. And because you are not required to become an argument. You can rest before every adjective. This may be the deepest home, the place where no external event is required to prove the basic fact of being. I am. The desire may grow from there. The desired state may be chosen from there. But being is prior. You are not trying to earn the right to exist through manifestation. This is important. Do not make the wish another examination of your worth. If it comes, I am worthy. If it does not, I failed. No. You are more than the outcome of one desire. You are more than whether one relationship takes the form you prefer. More than one financial season. More than one career. More than one home. More than one chapter. Let desire enrich being. Do not allow desire to hold being hostage. Perhaps that is why you can finally release it tonight. You do not need the wish to carry your entire identity. It can return to being a wish, a beautiful preference, a direction, a state you are becoming familiar with. Not the judge of whether life has accepted you. This returns dignity to you. And dignity can sleep. No need to stand at attention all night. Lie down within yourself. Perhaps you have been standing psychologically for years, waiting at a counter, waiting at a station, waiting outside a door, waiting for your name, waiting for a response, waiting for permission. Enough standing. Sit. Or better, lie down. The waiting office is closed. No one is calling numbers tonight. Nothing will be decided by your vigilance. Let the chair be empty. Let the corridor become dark. You are not required to wait there. You can go home inwardly. What would home mean now? Perhaps simply this. I do not have to remain the person for whom fulfillment always belongs elsewhere. That is enough. I do not have to remain the person for whom fulfillment always belongs elsewhere. Feel the distance in that old identity. Always elsewhere. Tomorrow. Another person. Another city. another number, another version of you, elsewhere. Tonight, let elsewhere lose some of its authority. The state is not elsewhere. The state is an arrangement of consciousness available here, not perfected, available. You may lie here and know a little belonging, a little dignity, a little support, a little peace, perhaps only enough peace to stop speaking for 10 seconds. Enough. Do not despise little states. A candle is small compared with the night, yet in the room it is sufficient to see. You do not need the whole sky to become daylight before you can recognize what is near. Perhaps one small inner light is enough tonight, and perhaps even the candle can now go out. You know the room, or you know enough. Darkness is no longer proof that the room vanished. This is faith becoming gentle. You do not need to keep the lamp lit because you fear the state will disappear. Turn it down. The state can survive darkness. The state can survive sleep. The state can survive the absence of words. It can even survive a doubtful dream. No need to manage dreams. No need to ask the sleeping mind for a perfect performance. Sleep is allowed to be sleep. Perhaps you dream nonsense. Fine. Perhaps nothing remembered. Fine. Perhaps you wake at 3 in the morning with an old worry. Fine. You have not failed. Say if you wish. Nothing needs to be decided now. Then turn over. Rest again. The night is not a test. This entire recording was not a test. It was an invitation to stop testing yourself. Do I believe? Do I feel? Do I deserve? Is it mine? Is it working? Enough tests. You can live before receiving all the scores. Perhaps there is no score. Perhaps the only meaningful question is whether the chosen state is becoming more habitable. And even that question need not be asked every day. Live. That is the answer. Live from dignity when you remember. Live from support when you remember. Live from belonging when you remember. Act responsibly. Respect other people. Attend to facts. Make corrections. Learn. Ask for help. Leave what diminishes you when that is appropriate. Build what matters. Receive what is freely given. And do not make every ordinary movement a ritual. Life itself becomes the practice. That is when the teaching matures. The teacher's words retreat. The student lives. Perhaps soon my voice should retreat as well. You have heard enough. Nothing remains at the end that you must collect. No secret phrase. No final technique. No last instruction that determines whether tonight succeeds. Success is not the proper word here. You listened. Perhaps you understood. Perhaps you drifted. Perhaps you resisted. Perhaps you slept through half. All allowed. You do not have to repeat the night correctly. If you return another evening, return because the state is becoming familiar, not because you fear you failed. There is no failed night in which you rested. Rest has its own value, and now rest can become the only value that matters for these remaining moments. Nothing needs to be proved. Let the sentence move farther away. Nothing needs to be watched. Father. The future may remain unseen. Father. The wish may become quiet. The image may fade. The words may fade. Perhaps my voice becomes only sound. It is mine within. I rest. No need to respond. It is mine within. I rest. And perhaps mine no longer means possession at all. It means no longer foreign. Known enough. Allowed enough. Near enough. It is mine within. I rest. No reaching. No reaching. The arm need not extend toward tomorrow. The mind need not extend. The wish need not extend. Rest is here. The bed is here. Breath is here. You are here. That is enough. Perhaps there is still something you want very badly. Let yourself want it. You do not need to extinguish desire. Just remove the demand that desire hurt in order to be sincere. You can desire gently. There is no virtue in pain merely because it accompanies a wish. You may say inwardly, I would love this, and then rest. That is a mature desire. It does not pretend indifference. It does not become desperation. I would love this, and I remain here. I would welcome this, and I remain whole enough to sleep. I prefer this, and I do not have to spend the night suffering its absence. How freeing. Perhaps that is the quiet final form of assumption. Not I must make this happen. Not I must believe perfectly. But I know the state I wish to live from. I am learning it, and I can rest. No cosmic strain, no negotiation, no force. Only an inward choice repeated gently until it becomes less of a choice and more of a way. Then even the way becomes invisible. My way. Remember? At first deliberate, eventually ordinary. And if fulfillment becomes ordinary within you, perhaps you will stop calling it fulfillment. It will simply be life. That is the final transformation. What you once placed on a distant pedestal enters the room and eventually becomes part of the furniture. You do not worship the chair, you sit. You do not worship the lamp, you read. You do not worship the table, you eat. Let desired states become useful in the same way. Belonging lets you love more freely. Support lets you think more clearly. Dignity lets you act without begging for identity. Capability lets you begin. Peace lets you sleep. This is enough. Nothing grander is required. And perhaps peace is the state that serves you now. Not perfect peace, just enough peace to stop demanding another insight. Enough peace to let the sentence end. Enough peace to permit silence between words. Enough peace to forget where we were. Enough peace not to care. You are allowed not to care for a while. The night does not need your management. Tomorrow does not need your management yet. The wish does not need your management now. Let all three remain beyond the edge of attention. Night, tomorrow, wish, all quiet. And you hear, perhaps even you, begins to soften. Breath, weight, darkness, sound. No need to name, no need to claim. The word mine becomes almost unnecessary. Still, if it comforts you, it is mine within. I rest. It is mine within. I rest. The state is no longer standing outside asking to be admitted. No one is at the door. No one is knocking. Perhaps there is no door. Only the room. Only quiet. Only the end of reaching. This is where I leave you. Not at the moment of acquisition. At the moment after the need to acquire inwardly has loosened. Not standing before the desired thing. Resting from the identity that believed it must always remain beyond reach. You began as the one trying to get. Perhaps now you can simply be the one who rests. And if tomorrow desire speaks again, listen gently. You already know it is not an enemy. It may point. Then let it point without turning the whole day into distance. Remember what lies beneath the symbol. Remember what you are actually learning to inhabit. And if you forget everything, remember only that you can return. No condemnation. Return. Then live. Then rest again. The road does not need to be watched from your pillow. The future may make its own entrance when it becomes present. Until then, let the future be future. Let this moment be this moment. You are allowed to inhabit it without calling it incomplete merely because something else is desired. This moment contains a bed, breath, awareness, perhaps quiet, perhaps not. Enough. Nothing needs to be added before sleep. No final emotion, no final scene, no final declaration. Even the phrase, "it is mine within," may now be released. You have used it. Put it down. What is yours inwardly does not disappear because the words disappear. Let the words fade. Mine, within, rest. Then perhaps only, rest. And perhaps not even that. Silence can finish what language began. You were never required to convince yourself that an outer fact had already happened. You were invited to stop giving its absence the power to make fulfillment feel foreign to you. That is all. Nothing needs to be proved. Nothing needs to be watched. The future may remain unseen. The wish may become quiet. The image may fade. The words may fade. It is mine within. I rest. The night may continue without you. Morning can find you later. The wish does not need your eyes upon it. The road does not need your feet tonight. The answer does not need supervision. The state may become quieter than thought. And you may sleep. You may sleep before certainty. You may sleep before evidence. You may sleep before the outer answer. You may sleep while the world remains unfinished. You may sleep because rest was never meant to be held hostage by fulfillment. And perhaps this is fulfillment's first quiet gift. You no longer postpone rest. You no longer postpone being. You no longer postpone all of life until one desired symbol arrives. You are here. And the state you choose is permitted to be here too. No more persuasion. No more courtroom. No more border guard. No more proving papers, no more measuring distance, nothing to do now, nothing to become before sleep, nothing to solve, nothing to force. You may let the night close around these words. Let them become faint, let them become unnecessary. What is truly yours within no longer needs to be chased through the night. It may simply become the state from which you sleep.